is Free Talk Live. Welcome to the program. You can join us here, bring up whatever is on your mind. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. We got a lot, as usual, to discuss here tonight. The latest... Thankfully, there hasn't been a whole lot of news that I've at least heard regarding the Freedom Convoy in the last 24 hours. We've been covering it heavily over the last 2.5 weeks here on Free Talk Live. And thankfully, I think we can actually move on to some other things here tonight. But if there's something that
Is it ending?
No. Actually, I was just watching earlier today. It's streaming right now. There's a channel called Ottawalks, Ottawalks, a guy that walks around a lot, apparently. And so he walks around the protest zone and talks to people and just kind of gives you a clue as to what's going on. And right now he's out in front of Parliament right now, and there's still plenty of trucks and plenty of people around. There was earlier today, once again, dancing happening out in front of the stage and speechifying, and it looks like everything is as normal, despite the talk of police maybe bringing in some sort of a no-go zone under the so-called Emergencies Act that has been invoked this week. So it may just be that the police are still biding their time and planning how they're going to approach this thing, because there's still, thousands of people around. So we'll see what develops there. And again, if there's some sort of fresh news that you want to bring up about that, feel free to jump in here. The number is 603-283-6160. But joining you here tonight, you've got Ian.
And Bonnie.
And Nikki.
All right, so we're going to change gears into something a little unusual. We've talked on occasion on this program about psychedelic mushrooms, entheogenic mushrooms, whatever word you prefer to use. Usually it's a discussion about adult use and how not only can it be a spiritual journey for some seekers, but it can also be a healing journey for others who might have things like PTSD or severe depression, for instance. These are things that there have been some studies that have been done over the last 2 decades primarily that show sometimes mushrooms can actually cure PTSD. They can cure addiction. To, like, if you've got a heroin addict or something like that. Mushrooms can be, cigarette addiction. Mushrooms can be very, very helpful for a lot of people in a therapeutic sort of use. But you don't hear a whole lot about children.
No, usually
and
not.
Mushrooms.
And I actually first got introduced to this concept. I listened to this podcast called Medicine Stories, and it's mainly about people's experience and expertise within using psychedelics in different plant medicines. And the girls on the podcast were talking about using psychedelics while pregnant, breastfeeding, and giving young children psychedelics. And it was really the first time I had ever really thought about that. It seems like kind of crazy to me at first. But the more I looked into it, the more I kind of realized, well, if we're taking all of these other pharmaceutical medications, then how are we deeming those to not be harmful? And we're saying that things like LSD and psychedelic mushrooms would be harmful. So it's interesting.
It's definitely counterintuitive because everybody is always told, oh, drugs and kids bad. Drugs and kids can't do that. You're a bad person.
Well, meth and kids probably is bad.
Probably.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But here we're talking about not some sort of human manufactured product.
Exactly.
We're talking about something that grows naturally in the, not in the earth, but it grows in cow dung typically, but it grows naturally. These things happen, and over time, humans we read a Terence McKenna book recently, Bonnie, you and I, that talks about the history of mushrooms and their use by humans all around the planet.
It's called Food of the Gods.
Thousands of years. And so these are very, very natural substance. That doesn't mean that it's not an incredibly strong substance that can induce many thoughts and potential visions and things like that. So, we always talk about set and setting as an important aspect of how
absolutely.
one should utilize these things, whether it be for a spiritual or a therapeutic use, or just have fun at with some friends, although it really isn't a party drug. It's more of a introspective kind of thing.
And if people are afraid to be too intense for a kid, I think a kid would be the perfect person to take it because...
Really?
well, when you first start smoking weed, it's like there's nothing about it that makes you scared at all. You're just like,
I was scared of the police.
well, yeah, scared of the police.
But the weed itself,
But
no.
I remember in high school and middle school getting just so high that if that happened to me nowadays, I'd be like, oh my God, something's happening that's wrong. Because now I have like more things in my life that could make me nervous. I don't know. But as a kid, you're more carefree and you could just get so much higher and not care and be like, oh wow, this is just how weed is. I don't know how to explain it.
Do you think it's like the innocence factor and like the lack of trauma, so to speak?
I mean, it could be that.
Well, hold on. I want to clarify something here. Nikki, the story you brought in tonight, you're talking about children, right?
Yeah. It's a Mexican tribe that is feeding children of 4.
Okay,
But-
Bonnie, you're talking about when you were a teenager.
Yeah, but I know lots of people that started smoking weed at like 9, 10, 11.
Okay. Well,
And it's not the same as mushrooms, but
no, definitely not the same.
there are lots of like 20-year-olds who've never smoked and would be like, no, I'm too scared because they have the preconceived ideas about it.
That something's wrong
And
with it.
you can microdose too and it have a very healing therapeutic effect without actually tripping.
Right.
In this story, it seems like the children are taking enough to, I think they're hallucinating. So
Wow.
definitely not microdosing, but...
Well, I want to hear about this because it is, like I said, seems very counterintuitive. I think a lot of people are going to initially recoil at this. So what's the source? Where are you getting this story from?
This is from the Daily Mail.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
So Margarito Mendoza still remembers a time when he was just 5 years old, that his grandmother first fed him magic mushrooms. In a ritual to celebrate surviving childhood, Margarito underwent an ancient shamanic custom in his Mexican hometown of San Jose del Pacifico. The boy was fed the hallucinogenic Mexicana fungus by his family, who then guided him on his journey. I was very scared at the visions that appeared to me because I had no idea why I was seeing them, he told Mail Online in an exclusive interview. Margarito is a member of the Zapotec indigenous tribe in the southern Mexican state of, I don't know how to say this, but in southern Mexico, who, according to local accounts, have been using hallucinogenic mushrooms in rituals for thousands of years. So at this point, this is part of their culture.
Yes.
And they've been doing it for thousands of years.
So they're familiar with it. They know what to expect.
They're with their families.
This is a generational thing that just happens. You reach a certain age, 5 or whatever it is in this case, like, all right.
And then you survived childhood, apparently.
Yeah, that's
When you're
like,
5.
it's the celebration. It's like, okay, you made it. You reached 5 years old. Time to celebrate. My family all took them at the same time, and we went walking in the forest, he said. I heard the trees speak to me, and the wind flowed before my eyes like a rainbow river. Sounds beautiful.
That sounds absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, just trying to imagine the level of connection or bonding that you could have with a family. I mean, because that's ultimately what families want. They want, their kids to grow up and love them and, be good kids and all that. And I think that mushrooms can bring people a certain level of bond that they otherwise wouldn't have. Like, because of drug prohibition, when I was growing up, my mom was absolutely in favor of the war on drugs. I believe she still is, which is sad to me. And I could never imagine, I can't even envision what taking mushrooms with her would be like. Like, it seems to be completely... it's out of the realm of possibility, and so like even thinking about it does not seem like a positive to me because of who she has been. She's not a bad person. I love
mindset,
her.
though.
Right. I love her, but it's just not for her. It wouldn't work out. But to be in a family where that is something that is a tradition that's been passed down for generations, that, okay, we've got, it's the weekend, we're going to go for a walk. Let's all take, half a dose of mushrooms and make that walk way more interesting. So I want to hear more about this. That's coming up. If you want to share your thoughts, were you on mushrooms at a young age? You want to talk about it? It's Free Talk Live.
Are you tired of your taxes funding endless occupations around the world? Antiwar.com is run by people who understand that wars abroad become wars at home, wars on our freedoms. Antiwar.com is dedicated to bringing you the latest in news, views, interviews, and reviews from the top movers and shakers in the anti-occupation movement. Antiwar.com has it all, from thorough foreign policy analysis to interviews with whistleblowers who used to run the military-industrial complex. Anti-war, pro-free market. That's antiwar.com.
When Monster Hunter International discovers one of Isaac Newton's wardstones being auctioned off, they decide to steal it and use it to destroy the Chaos God once and for all. But a mysterious thief upends their plan, and it soon becomes a race against time as something much older and infinitely more evil awakens in the jungles of South America. Monster Hunter Bloodlines by New York Times bestselling author Larry Correia and Baen Books. Visit monsterhunternation.com for more.
I'm crazy about My Magic Mud. This is the most important oral care product created this millennium, and I'm not kidding. We all have different opinions on politics and issues, but we all have mouths. And I want yours to be as clean as possible, with teeth as bright as they were meant to be. I will never be without My Magic Mud. It's a little surprising, but man, does it work. If you only listen to one thing I say ever, go to mymagicmud.com and get 20% off with code FTL. mymagicmud.com, code FTL.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless free market non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks. Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live. The phones are open. You can join us here. The number for you is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Coming up here tonight, Bonnie's got a story about the My Pillow guy. I'm not sure what exactly he did. Where did he go? Didn't he try to go to Canada and get refused entry?
I don't know about that, but he was here in New Hampshire at the Doubletree in Manchester.
Oh, really?
Talking to state reps.
We'll talk about that. The state reps, by the way, in New Hampshire, They voted for a quote-unquote marijuana legalization bill today, and it's not a very good bill, and I'm pretty bummed about it. I mean, I guess it's kind of good that it's legalization, and it's kind of good that they're not going to quote-unquote tax it, but they're going to turn it over to the government to sell. It's like, what are you thinking? Why are the Liberty reps sponsoring this bill? I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me. Yeah.
Maybe they think it's like a baby steps in the right direction.
Yeah,
and I always think that's retarded. I'm tired of baby steps in the right direction.
Yeah.
Just start putting out things that are actually good and then getting people to talk about it and explain why it makes sense.
I agree with that. Unfortunately, you're not a state rep, so
I don't want to be.
Free market weed only.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that it's going to prohibit people from acquiring cannabis, let's say on the dark web or getting it from somewhere else, but ultimately it's going to give the state a monopoly on sales, and I think that's a huge mistake.
But all libertarians should know that the state monopoly on alcohol is bad. So why don't they put two and two together?
It's really bad, and it's hard to change. Because, you could argue, we're just taking this initial step and then eventually we'll open up the market and we'll let anyone who wants to, with a convenience store or anybody anywhere can sell this stuff. And that's not going to be easy.
The government's not going to want to give away their monopoly.
Not after they went and opened 10 stores. The bill that I was looking at earlier says they're going to open 10 stores. They're going to keep it separate, apparently, from the liquor stores. So it's not just that they're going to add a section at the existing liquor stores, which would be a cheaper way to go about it. No, they're going to open up entirely new retail outlets, create a whole new government bureaucracy, hire all new government bureaucrats just to have government weed stores in New Hampshire. At least that's the way the bill's written. There apparently is an amendment to the bill, which I was not able to find. It's not as easy to find the amendments to the bills as it is the bills themselves. So who knows? Maybe the amendment made it better. Maybe the amendment opens it up for competition, but I'm not optimistic.
All the way through, voted on, passed?
No. It was just the state house. So it could still fail in the Senate. The governor could still veto it.
Okay.
But it did look like it was a veto-proof ratio. I did not do the calculation to see for sure, but at a glance, it looked like it was more than 67% that had voted for this. And so if the same thing happens in the Senate, if it gets the same veto-proof number of votes, then it wouldn't matter what the governor does. He could veto it, and then they can just override. They could vote to override that. So we'll see how that develops. The real disappointment about that is that there are half a dozen legalization bills this time around. There are some that are worse than others, and this is one of the worst ones. Others, the ones that I like the best, are the constitutional amendments, where somebody's put forward, I think there's 2 of them, and at least one of them basically is just like a one-liner that says all people in New Hampshire or adults or whatever have a constitutional right to possess cannabis.
Yeah,
Boom.
I liked that one too.
Yeah, take care of it.
Done. Now, of course, that doesn't solve the sales question or anything like that, but I think that you want to talk about a step in the right direction? That's a step in the right direction because it doesn't create a regulatory structure. It doesn't create government, taxation or anything like that.
But as far as the sales go, you can just buy and sell and grow weed and it's fine. I don't get why it would
it'd be nice if you could, but that's currently illegal, and this bill will also make it illegal unless you're a government-approved grower, right? So you can grow it legally as long as you get their approval.
It's not even going to be like in Massachusetts where you can have I think it's 10 plants per person in the house.
I don't think that's addressed in this bill. I think there might be a separate bill for home grow. So there's a lot going on with
what's going to
cannabis.
happen to all the stores, the medical stores that are already open? They're just going to be forced to shut down and
That's a good
the government's
question.
Gonna take over?
I presume they would still be selling medical cannabis, so to those with the medical card, they could still go to those stores.
But I mean, they wouldn't.
But I don't
be
think
part
they
of
could
the
sell
government.
recreational.
Oh.
But that's an excellent question, Bonnie. It's a long bill. I didn't read the whole thing. I just scanned through it. So we're talking about drugs, and we're going to continue that discussion. Also want to invite you over at freetalklive.com. We've got archives. You can download episodes of the show that go way back over at freetalklive.com, so please enjoy those. And don't forget about Intercoin. They can help any business and organization launch their own currency and raise money using their own token. And now they've launched their investor token worldwide, and you can get it on an exchange called X Markets. It's exmarkets.com. All you need is an email address to sign up, and that will allow you to keep your privacy intact. You can deposit dozens of different cryptos, including Bitcoin, onto X markets, trade them for Tether, use that Tether to buy ITR, which is the Intercoin Investor Token. You can learn more about the Intercoin vision at intercoin.org, and you can buy or sell ITR on xmarkets.com, exmarkets.com. So we've been talking, the first topic of the show tonight is from you, Nikki. You've got a story from the Daily Mail about Mexican families that are doing mushrooms, psychedelic mushrooms, doing them together as a family with kids as young as 4, 5, 6 years old. And I'm really interested in this topic. I mean, I'm not interested in having a family personally, but I think it's very cool that this is happening and that this has been happening for generations.
And it's something that doesn't get talked about a lot because most people just have the philosophy like, don't give children drugs. Right. But when you look at it as medicine and not as a drug, I think sometimes that perception changes a little bit. So this story is talking about a man, Margarito, who is recounting his experience with psychedelic mushrooms, taking them with his family. So he says, my family all took them at the same time, and we went walking in the forest. I heard the trees speak to me, and the wind flowed before my eyes like a rainbow river. The Mexican fungus, which induces hallucinations, lack of rational judgment, and a sense of well-being, grows in the mountains of the state from May until September. So they're locally harvesting them as well. The mushrooms are seen as sacred by many in the community and are regularly used in ritual ceremonies conducted by local shamans, one of which involves celebrating the passage of infancy into childhood.
Oh, okay.
So is that younger than 5? Because the other one was celebrating being out of childhood.
I think I misunderstood what they meant when they said, because they said celebrating surviving childhood. It seemed, or maybe they misspoke. They meant surviving infancy. Mm-hmm. So you're like, oh, you're not a toddler anymore. You're a kid now, because that would be like right around 4 years old. 3-year-old Alejandro Garcias, whose parents run the town's oldest restaurant, will be fed the hallucinogenic mushrooms when he undergoes the ritual in June next year. The boy, who is not even in school yet, will be dressed in the traditional garb that the Zapotec people will be taken into the hills above his village, where his parents will pick the mushrooms and eat them with their son. When the hallucinogenic effect of the fungus begins to set in, they will begin chanting, giving thanks to their pagan gods for the later member of their community.
We will continue with more about families using psychedelic mushrooms together. The number here is 603-283-6160, something that I expect is fairly rare within the United States. But if you were raised in a family like this and you want to tell us about it, feel free. It's Free Talk Live.
And now, time for something totally different. Intercoin is a project that's working to make crypto mainstream. We use the power of smart contracts to help any community in the world launch their own cryptocurrency. Ever wanted to release your own coin or build your own app to grow your business? Intercoin's team builds apps that have reached 9 million people around the world. And now it's time to help make a real social impact in your local community. Go to intercoin.org and join the movement. That's intercoin.org.
You know, when we first started Intercoin about 3 years ago, we had a big vision to help every community in the world have access to the same tools that large states and federations do, to hold local elections on the blockchain, to have their own local currency, shop local, hire local, and help fight the forces of globalization that have decimated some of these communities.
Go to intercoin.org and join the movement.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. The White House says it has seen no evidence of Russian military de-escalation on the country's borders with Ukraine, mirroring the assessment offered today by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and NATO's Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg. Asked today about Russian Defense Ministry video purporting to show troops pulling out and packing equipment onto the back of trains, Press Secretary Jen Psaki offered this response at the White House briefing.
I think what what we are watching very closely is not just what they say, but what they do. I understand you're referencing a video, but we've also seen, as the Secretary confirmed this morning, continued problematic, troubling buildup of troops at the border and surrounding Ukraine.
The US, meanwhile, says Russia will face a swift response if it recognizes Donetsk and Luhansk as independent. The Russian parliament this week authorized President Putin to take that move in the predominantly Russian-speaking region of eastern Ukraine. From FSN's Washington bureau, Kate Fisher reports.
President Vladimir Putin said he will not immediately recognize the so-called republics, but he is likely to wield that option as a bargaining chip as he continues to demand security guarantees from the West. The US State Department said that his approval would, quote, amount to the Russian government's wholesale rejection of its commitments under the Minsk agreements. They outlined the process for the reintegration of areas of Ukraine controlled by Russia since 2014.
Efforts continue in Ottawa to end a siege of part of the city by protesters demonstrating against COVID-19 vaccine mandates and other restrictions. FSN's Will Denzelo is on assignment in the Canadian capital for us.
Public Safety Minister Marco Mendicino says police will soon create no-go areas in downtown Ottawa, and those that violate this will be subject to fines or jail time. He adds that more concrete barriers will be set up and that officials will be more forceful in pressuring private tow truck companies to remove big rigs that are illegally blocking roads. This comes after Prime Minister Justin Trudeau invoked the Emergencies Act on Monday, granting greater powers to authorities in an effort to break up the protests.
And there's more trouble today for Britain's royal family. A police investigation has been launched into a charity founded by Prince Charles amid claims that a Saudi funder was offered assistance seeking British citizenship and honours in exchange for his money. Royal commentator Peter Hunt says the heir to the British throne insists he had nothing to do with it.
It's potentially very challenging for him, very uncomfortable for him, and at the very least, just on the basis of this statement that he keeps repeating about not knowing, then there's a question mark about his judgment, because his critics are entitled to ask, well, how didn't he know? How can it be that he didn't know?
And the head of that charitable foundation resigned late last year. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live. You can join us. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Here tonight, you've got Ian.
And Bonnie.
And Nikki.
We're talking about an unusual subject, and one that I think a lot of people are going to recoil at initially, but I think people should give this a chance. I understand there probably are people in our audience, maybe, folks listening on a conservative talk radio station out there that just cannot even fathom this whole concept that somebody would actually give their kids psychedelic mushrooms. But I suspect somebody who is thinking that way has never actually tried psychedelic mushrooms, so you don't know anything about them. And you're just prejudging based on drug war propaganda that has been out there for, generations, which are lies, by the way, about these things. And so, it's hard to tell somebody like that, okay, well, at least try to keep your mind open about this. These are people in Mexico that you're telling us about, Nikki, families who've been doing this for generations.
Thousands of years.
Yeah, this is a tradition that goes back for a very long time. They've got, the people that have used these mushrooms, the shamans. They use not just mushrooms, but other things, frog venom, and there's a variety of different kind of entheogenic substances that these people take in order to provide them with various different visions for different reasons. And you know what? That is their right as a human being to put whatever they want into their own body, and it's their right as a family to decide for their kids what to do together, in the same way that a family can decide to sit down and watch hours and hours of television together, which is by no means a positive, healthy thing to do on a regular basis. Absolutely. And just like they can decide to go to McDonald's every single day. every week for, not very healthy food, not very healthy eating. So there's plenty of bad choices that families make, and I think this is a very wholesome choice, honestly. I think that what they're talking about, having a coming-of-age ceremony where the entire family takes mushrooms together and goes for a walk and, just experiences nature, that sounds pretty awesome to me.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah. So what else do you want to share from this Daily Mail story?
So his mother, Lila Gomez, says, "We don't see it as dangerous. She consumes the mushrooms on a regular basis."
Well, by definition, the taking of mushrooms is actually like the least dangerous drug you can do.
Yeah, you can't really overdose on them. I mean,
you can't.
Maybe you can take too much and it's like a little bit too intense.
That's for sure.
But it's not like you can take bad acid and like have a really bad trip because it was like fake or whatever. Like generally they're pretty safe and if you're taking a correct dose and you're in a good setting and you're in the right mindset.
Yeah.
I think they're pretty harmless and they actually have tons of benefits.
You also can't overdose and die.
Yeah, you're not going to die from taking, too much mushrooms. And again, the only thing you really need to be concerned with is that you get the right mushrooms. So you have to be careful about which mushrooms you consume because some of them are deadly, right? Like, you got to know what you're looking for. And guess what? People who've been doing this for generations know exactly what they're doing. Yeah. They're not sending the four-year-old out
to find them themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, like, even here in New Hampshire, I harvest mushrooms, not necessarily psychedelic mushrooms, but I harvest different kinds of mushrooms to eat. And if you know what you're looking for, then it's a safe practice.
Exactly. And there's, you can learn things. It takes time, I imagine, but the people who do this, they know what they're doing. When you look at the drug chart that Dr. David Nutt put together up in the UK, probably like a decade ago now, after he was basically their drug czar, and he ended up, I think, quitting or getting fired or something, and he turned and he went against the war on drugs, and he came out with a list of drugs by the harm to the individual and harm to society. Mushrooms is at the bottom of the list. Heroin and alcohol are at the top. They're basically tied for the number one most dangerous drug.
And alcohol is legal.
And correct. And cannabis is kind of like mid-pack. You would expected cannabis to be lower than it actually ended up on the list, but mushrooms are all the way at the bottom as the lowest, the least damaging to the individual and the least damaging to society. So
yeah, I'm not surprised by that at all. So there's a lot of history and culture surrounding these sacred plants. They link us directly with our ancestors. The mushrooms are good for the soul. A local witch doctor who conducts the ceremony following intense steam baths in her temescal, a rudimentary sauna in which herbal tea is poured over red-hot stones for the purification of those inside. The steam and local herbs in it help clear the mind and prepare for the voyage of the mushrooms that you take.
And witch doctor is probably not like how she would describe herself.
And
that's probably a shaman.
That's what I was thinking too, because in the title it mentions something about witch doctor, and I feel like witch doctor just has such a negative connotation.
Sure, I'm thinking of some woman with a big wart on her nose over a cauldron,
exactly.
cackling.
The hallucinogenic fungus, although illegal for recreational use in Mexico, are nevertheless permitted for consumption in indigenous settlements where the culture holds them as sacred medicine. So not legal unless you're in these indigenous cultures.
Well, did you know that in New Hampshire, according to a Supreme Court case that was decided in December of 2020, it is legal under the Constitution to do psychedelic mushrooms and arguably any other drug that you choose for spiritual purposes. I
didn't know that.
Crystal clear, unanimous Supreme Court. There was not a single dissenter on the Supreme Court of New Hampshire in this particular case.
They overturned a conviction a guy had.
Correct. They overturned a conviction that a member of the Oklavweha Church, which is a Native American church that is essentially a psychedelic church. He's got his membership card and everything, and there's certain rules around how he has to use the mushrooms. Like he can't do them in public, for instance. That's one.
And generally, people wouldn't.
I used to know a guy who would drive on shrooms, and that
Bad
was
plan.
terrifying.
Bad plan.
I would never get in the car with somebody
No,
on
you're
shrooms.
supposed to like hug a tree or something, like go on a walk in the woods. You're not supposed to get
Don't use
behind
heavy
the
equipment.
wheel. Yeah,
please don't use heavy equipment while tripping. But that was a really cool story about like a real pleasant surprise. And the reason for it is because in New Hampshire, the New Hampshire Constitution's Bill of Rights not only protects your right to religion, meaning you have the right to have a religion, whichever religion you choose, but it also protects your right to worship. And that's the key difference between what the U.S. Constitution does, which only protects your right to religion, but the New Hampshire Constitution goes further and says you have a right to worship God in the way you choose, so long as you don't disturb other people's peace. So you can't go out and like shout in front of somebody's house and say you're praying, right?
Yeah.
Like you've got to be peaceful in your use, which is why, if you do it at home, first of all, odds are you're not going to get caught in any way, shape, or form. This guy ended up having his house raided, and I don't know if somebody snitched on him or what the reason why that happened, but if you're doing mushrooms alone, by yourself, or with your friends in your home, you're probably not going to get caught in the first place. But if you do it in New Hampshire, and by some chance you do get caught, if you're doing it for spiritual reasons, that case is going to likely get overturned, which is amazing.
That's awesome.
So it's not just Mexico.
A local woman who sells the mushrooms preserved in honey in her shop to tourists says they are teacher. We use them not only to feel closer to nature, but also to ask deep questions and find solution to life's many problems.
Vegetable gnosis.
Yep.
Yeah. As well as eaten fresh or preserved in honey, locals also consume the psychedelic drug in tea after boiling the mushrooms in water or milk. The town's fame for legal mushrooms has started to attract backpackers traveling in Mexico, particularly those passing through the popular nearby beach resort of Puerto Escondido.
We're going to continue here more on use of mushrooms at a young age. Is this a dangerous activity? Should we be frightened? Do we need the police to come in with a drug task force and attack dogs? That's going to make a kid's life better, right? Let's have a police raid.
And take their
Arrest
parents
their
away.
parents,
Yeah.
right. The number is 603-283-6160. This is Free Talk Live. The Free State Project has reached its goal of 20,000 liberty lovers who've pledged to move to New Hampshire and get active to achieve liberty in our lifetime. Perhaps you're trying to figure out what part of New Hampshire should be your destination. If so, consider Keene. You'll find more than 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com. Keene is famous for its historic, publicity-generating activism, as well as being the liberty media capital of the world. It's home to freekeene.com, New Hampshire's destination for liberty activism, news, and opinion. For years, we've been compiling over 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com, where you'll learn about some of what's happening here and what makes Keene a great place to live. If you love liberty, you'll probably enjoy anywhere you end up in the Shire. But do your due diligence first. Please visit move.freekeene.com for the full list of over 150 reasons to move to Keene. That's move.freekeene.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
This is Michael Dean from the Freedom Fiends. I've run websites since 1996 and have used over a dozen web hosts in that time. AgristHosting.com is the only one that hasn't broken my heart. Agrist Hosting's uptime and service is stellar, and their DDoS mitigation is the best I've seen. That's important because if you tell the truth in this world, you'll ruffle feathers. And some people will try dirty tricks to silence your voice. No matter what the haters hit us with, Agorist Hosting keeps our websites online. If you have a mission-critical commercial presence or a world-changing activism site, you cannot tolerate any skullduggery. So go with agoristhosting.com. Have a WordPress or blog site, but you're not satisfied with performance or uptime? Or just want raw hosting? Want to pay with Bitcoin? Agorist Hosting specializes in high-performance hosting with personalized service. Go to agoristhosting.com and click on the button that says Get Hosted. That's agoristhosting.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
This is Free Talk Live. You can bring up whatever you want here. The phones are open. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. With you in the studio tonight, it's Ian.
It's Bonnie.
And Nikki.
So we're talking about psychedelic mushrooms and kind of an aspect that I don't know if we've ever covered. I mean, we've talked a lot about drugs over the years on this program and the responsible adult use of drugs. Is it possible to have responsible use of drugs involving children? And when I say children, I mean like children, not teenagers, but people who have not hit puberty. We're talking about people 6 years old or younger in some cases in Mexico doing mushrooms as a family outing, as a family spiritual journey, as a rite of passage. We've got somebody watching us on apparently our Facebook feed. Nathaniel Cospidus says, do not, in all caps, do not give underage children psilocybin magic mushrooms.
Why not?
Well, I would say that as a default message, yeah, you shouldn't just hand a kid a mushroom and say, all right, Johnny, have a good day.
Yeah, right.
Right? So, like, if that's going to happen, then it does need to happen in the way that I think they're doing it down in Mexico with this tribe of people that have been doing it for generations, where it's done together as a family occasion. That's what makes sense to me.
I would also like to paint a picture for everyone. So say you have a baby in the hospital, right? Mom gets an epidural, which has fentanyl in it. You know, the thing that everybody's ODing on the streets, the synthetic heroin. So that, and then the baby's born, right? Then it gets hepatitis B vaccine, it gets erythromycin in its eyes for no reason. And then by the time the child is 4 years old, they receive about 50 different injections. So to me, and mind you, a lot of those medications and the vaccinations that these children are getting can have some pretty nasty side effects.
Sure.
So that's what it's like in our culture.
And now they want to pump them with the COVID vaccine, too.
Yeah.
Excellent point, Nikki.
Yeah. So in other cultures, instead of doing that, they live off the land. They live natural, healthy lives. They live with nature. They eat whole foods, fruits and vegetables, and clean water. And maybe they take a dose of psilocybin mushrooms with their families in a safe and loving environment. So how is that worse than what we are doing to our children in the United States?
Great question. I mean, it sounds to me like it's an amazing experience. I mean, I'm jealous. I wish that I could have had something like that as a kid. Not that I had a bad upbringing or anything like that, but I didn't have that.
And I think a lot of people, especially in the United States and in other areas, kind of have a lot of trauma in their child. I know a lot of people that have gone through foster care and they've just told me horror stories.
Oh, yeah.
So I think a lot of the things we're doing in our cultures are not conducive to like a mentally and physically healthy life.
No doubt.
Right? Like a lot of people have a lot of trauma. They have PTSD. They have anxiety.
And
they
that
have
gets
depression.
passed down, right? Like that gets passed down from generation to generation because, you get raised in a household where dad's got PTSD. That's probably going to be a kind of a crappy childhood, having to deal with that.
Yeah.
And what's that going to do to the kids?
So maybe this is a way that they are kind of putting their children in a positive frame of mind. Because I know you guys have also had experiences with mushrooms, correct?
I have, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's a very like peaceful, loving, beautiful experience. And I know personally some people who have taken mushrooms, and after that experience, they stopped struggling with depression. They looked at the world a completely different way, and it affected them very, very positively. So what if we were just starting that younger instead of waiting until you're like 30 years old to have this healing experience?
Yeah, and then you've built up 30 years worth of problems and issues, and you have to deal with all that at once.
Yeah.
That can be a challenge.
And the other part about it is doing it with your adult family members who want what's best for you instead of going and doing mushrooms at a party with some kid who wants to drive on mushrooms.
Yeah, huge difference in the set and setting there in that particular case, which is the most important factor. The set being what you bring your mental mindset to, like, are you prepared for this? Are you afraid of it? Because if you're afraid of it, not a good time for it.
Yeah.
Setting being the physical, where are you? Are you in a place where you feel comfortable? Have you been there before? Are you around other people who you know and that you're comfortable with? Or are you at some sort of, like you said, a party with a bunch of strangers? So, like, there's real bad places to do things like mushrooms, and then there's some just excellent places where the odds that something could go wrong are very, very slim, unless, of course, you take a heroic level dose and you've got some serious issues deep down that you have to deal with. You might have a bad trip in that case, but at least you're then around people that you care about. You're not in a place where a cop's gonna like stumble across you or whatever.
Yeah.
So like there's definitely some better circumstances in which to do these things.
And I think that's why people do have bad trips, is because of their like emotional turmoil and their built up trauma.
Absolutely.
When you're 4 years old, like,
you don't have that.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, some young children do, but I'm assuming that most don't.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have like that innocence factor and you don't have all of those like negative preconceived ideas of the world and of the experience you're about to have, I think it allows these children to have a much better experience.
I agree with you. I mean, it has to be a much more pure experience because those kids haven't been, diluted or debased by all the propaganda. I mean, for me, when I first started doing cannabis, I mean, I touched on this earlier, my biggest fear was I thought the cops were going to bust in. I thought, like, and it wasn't that I thought that while it was happening, because I was able to kind of put that aside once I actually, got high and laughed a lot and had a good time with my friends. But prior to that, like the planning of it, we were so meticulous. Like we had an escape route if the cops were going to show up, because we were, we've been indoctrinated by the drug abuse resistance education or whatever, DARE, for years. And, they told us that this was as bad as heroin and, you're going to go to prison or whatever. And so having to get over some of those things, and then further years later for me to use LSD and then ultimately mushrooms. I think I did LSD before I did mushrooms, but to do a psychedelic like that was, to go to a new level. And there was some trepidation around that too because of all the propaganda.
Yep.
And you just, kids don't have that if they're 4 years old or whatever.
That's what I meant by it seems like it would be easier for a kid to take it, because I didn't do mushrooms until I was, I think, 22. And if somebody asked me the day before if I would ever do it, I might have been like, no, that's kind of scary. The only reason I did it was because my friend kind of randomly was like, oh, I have these. She's one of my best friends I've known for over a decade. And we were just in her house. I love her house so much. And I was like, I guess I'll do it with you. And it was great doing it with one of my best friends ever. But
nice.
all I was saying that for was to say if I had done it at a younger age, I would have just been probably more like, oh yeah, I'll do it. I remember in like middle school thinking like, oh yeah, I'd totally do mushrooms. But then it's like you get older and you're like, no, wait, think about it. It might be scary. I don't know.
Yeah, I never had any thought like that when I was in middle school or anything because I'd been purely indoctrinated by the system.
I read
to be afraid of that stuff.
Go Ask Alice, and then I wanted to do drugs.
Oh, nice. What else do we need to know? Is there more to the story, Nikki?
Just the rest of the story is some of the shamans and the local people just talking about how this culture, paired with the beautiful beaches, I'm sure, has attracted a lot of tourists.
Sure.
So a lot of tourists
Psychedelic
go there.
Tourists.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess there's some people who are staying there. Like there's this one guy from Australia that is running a hostel there, and he's selling these mushrooms to tourists.
Wow.
And there have been some bad experiences because I think they're just really strong and they're doing it. I think the indigenous people there are doing the ritual in a specific way. You know, they're doing the cleansing steams first, and they're leading you on this journey, and they're making people feel safe. So I think when you just have some like random young tourist girl coming, I guess,
and she buys some mushrooms, and then woo, see what happens.
Yeah, so I think they've had some bad experiences with that.
It's inevitable. I mean, if you've got this tourist mentality, people are just going to come to this place. They're gonna get go on a trip. It's just numbers, right? Like you put 1,000 people through a trip, somebody's going to have a bad trip.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if it's 5 people, I don't know if it's 2 people or 25 people, but there's a percentage of that 1,000 people that are going to have a bad time. That's just the way it is.
We're going back to like the conversation we were just having where some people have a lot of built up turmoil and trauma. So that can sometimes, I mean, it's a healing process. I mean, it strips you down to the core and it makes you...
It forces you to face those things. And some people don't want that. And that's why they have the bad time, I think.
I think so too.
The number here is 603-283-6160, and even if it's not a bad trip, it can still be uncomfortable in some ways because, again, it is a very personal experience. The number is 603-283-6160. You can join us here. Share your thoughts. Coming up, there's news about the pillow guy, Mike Lindell. We'll get into that on the way. It is Free Talk Live. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. The White House says it has seen no evidence of Russian military de-escalation on the country's borders with Ukraine, mirroring the assessment offered today by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and NATO's Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg. Asked today about Russian Defense Ministry video purporting to show troops pulling out and packing equipment onto the back of trains, Press Secretary Jen Psaki offered this response at the White House briefing.
I think what we are watching very closely is not just what they say, but what they do. I understand you're referencing a video, but we've also seen, as the Secretary confirmed this morning, continued problematic, troubling buildup of troops at the border and surrounding Ukraine.
The U.S., meanwhile, says Russia will face a swift response if it recognizes Donetsk and Luhansk as independent. The Russian parliament this week authorized President Putin to take that move in the predominantly Russian-speaking region of eastern Ukraine. From FSN's Washington bureau, Kate Fisher reports.
President Vladimir Putin said he will not immediately recognize the so-called republics, but he is likely to wield that option as a bargaining chip as he continues to demand security guarantees from the West. The US State Department said that his approval would, quote, amount to the Russian government's wholesale rejection of its commitments under the Minsk agreements. They outlined the process for the reintegration of areas of Ukraine controlled by Russia since 2014.
Efforts continue in Ottawa to end a siege of part of the city by protesters demonstrating against COVID-19 vaccine mandates and other restrictions. FSN's Will Denzelo is on assignment in the Canadian capital for us.
Public Safety Minister Marco Mendicino says police will soon create no-go areas in downtown Ottawa, and those that violate this will be subject to fines or jail time. He adds that more concrete barriers will be set up and that officials will be more forceful in pressuring private tow truck companies to remove big rigs that are illegally blocking roads. This comes after Prime Minister Justin Trudeau invoked the Emergencies Act on Monday, granting greater powers to authorities in an effort to break up the protests.
And there's more trouble today for Britain's royal family. A police investigation has been launched into a charity founded by Prince Charles amid claims that a Saudi funder was offered assistance seeking British citizenship and honours in exchange for his money. Royal commentator Peter Hunt says the heir to the British throne insists he had nothing to do with it.
It's potentially very challenging for him, very uncomfortable for him, and at the very least, just on the basis of this statement that he keeps repeating about not knowing, then there's a question mark about his judgment, because his critics are entitled to ask, well, how didn't he know? How can it be that he didn't know?
And the head of that charitable foundation resigned late last year. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, looking today at P.J. O'Rourke, one of America's best-known satirists and a former editor of National Lampoon magazine. He died in the United States yesterday at the age of 74. His works, including Holidays from Hell, A Parliament of Whores, and Driving Like Crazy, became bestsellers not just in the US but around the world. His libertarian politics were in stark contrast to the counterculture years during which he emerged. And in a 2016 interview with PBS television in Chicago, he was asked to explain why his views were so different from other popular satirists of his time.
The liberal message, and I know it's not that I disagree with everything in the liberal message, but the liberal message is essentially a kind-hearted message. It is an inclusive message. It is a message about how government and politics can give us more things. And of course, that's not completely wrong. They can give us more things, at a cost, however. But it's a crowd-pleasing message, and people in show business tend to be crowd-pleasers, and therefore, it's not so much that comedy goes with being left-wing, it's show business that goes with being left-wing.
He described the choice in modern US politics between Democrats and Republicans as being a choice between silly and stupid. And the gonzo journalism that he produced from the Middle East and many other international locations made P.J. O'Rourke a cult figure. The main news again, the White House says it has seen no evidence of Russian military de-escalation on the country's borders with Ukraine. Police efforts continue in Ottawa to end a siege of the city by protesters demonstrating against COVID-19 vaccine mandates and other restrictions. And a police probe has been launched into a charity founded by Prince Charles amid claims that a Saudi funder was offered assistance seeking UK citizenship and honours in exchange for his money. And that is the latest feature story news. Simon Marks reporting.
It's The Onion Radio News. General Motors reports record sales of its new disposable car. This is Doyle Redland reporting. General Motors has announced a 56% increase in earnings this year, attributing much of it to February's wildly successful launch of the GMC Whim, the first ever non-refillable disposable automobile. Debuting at a cost of $1,100 each, the vehicles are flying out of showrooms as quickly as dealers can stock them. Whim enthusiast Glenn Shriver.
I recently consumed 4 vehicles driving from my home to Daytona Beach for the first annual Whim Owners Convention. I've already collected all 8 colors.
Rival automakers are preparing to counter with their own lines of disposable cars, including the Ford Temporare and the Chrysler Dumper. The 2002 Mitsubishi Ditch will be unveiled later this year with a projected sticker price of $799. Doyle Redland for The Onion Radio News, online at theonion.com.
Free Talk Live. It is Free Talk Live, and you can bring up whatever you want here as we kick off the second hour of the program. Joining you in the studio, it's Ian.
It's Bonnie. And Nikki.
Open phones at 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. For those of you just tuning in, we've been talking about psychedelic mushrooms for children, and it sounds crazy at first blush. But when you actually get into the story, which we did in the last hour, we're not going to, dig too deep at this point, but I just want to recap for you. There's some Mexican folks down in the southern Mexico, indigenous tribe types that have been using psychedelic mushrooms for generations as a family. And they do it together as a family, including children. And you know what? They think it's a good thing. And who's to say that it's not? Who's to tell these people that they shouldn't be doing that to their kids? Because the only reason why you believe that is because of drug propaganda, is because of the war on drugs and the prohibitionism here and the Puritanism here in the United States. That's the only reason why you could disagree with these families doing this stuff. If you want to weigh in, you can join us here. The number 603-283-6160. Let's go to Riley. He's calling us from Utah. Riley, you're on Free Talk Live. This, by the way, the very same Riley who is the guy that edits the Daily Digest for the Free Talk Live's archives every day.
And he's been a co-host.
Correct. Welcome back.
Yeah, I have been. Thank you. So I love the topic of psychedelics because I've had experience with psychedelics. My first experience was with mushrooms in ceremony, so that was really cool. But I wanted to talk about cannabis and spirituality, and also people forget that cannabis, like mushrooms, like ayahuasca, like LSD, can be a spiritual tool for expansion of one's consciousness.
Absolutely. Now, something that you're a blind man, just for our listeners that have never heard you before, something that you wouldn't be able to see about cannabis. I showed Bonnie the other day, when you put cannabis with like the real crystalline high-end cannabis, like the good stuff, when you put those crystals under a microscope, what do they look like, Bonnie?
Little teeny tiny mushrooms.
I'm telling you, they look little teeny.
That's amazing.
Cool.
So cannabis is literally coated with little teeny mushroom-looking things. It's fascinating. They're called trichomes, so they're not technically mushrooms, but it's awfully interesting.
And a few of them didn't look like mushrooms, but a lot of them did.
Yeah, they really do. Anyway, I think that's interesting because cannabis is considered a mild psychedelic, and yeah, it is absolutely a spiritual drug.
What I'd recommend for those who want to explore this idea is, if you're going to take cannabis as a spiritual tool, I'd recommend having a ritual with it. Maybe you have a couple hours before your session to clear your mind, your room, where you're going to use it, and take a little bit and take enough that you feel like it's going to work with you, and just sit with it, sit in silence, or put on some really calm music to help the experience. And I think from my experience with it, it's been really beneficial in my own personal life.
Mm. And you were raised Mormon, is that right?
I was raised Mormon. My parents and my family are still in the church. I am not. And
have they turned you out like a cult? Are you still together with your family, or do they know about your use of cannabis and other things?
family does not know about my use except my younger brother, since he's my roommate, but he doesn't seem to really care.
Okay.
My family doesn't know I've left the church, so I kind of keep that on the down low.
Okay.
Because that's what Mormons are known. They're known for that, right? Like, don't they turn away people who leave the church?
Some of them do, some of them don't. It just depends on the family.
I see.
From what I've heard. But yeah, I really like cannabis as a spiritual tool. I've recently acquired a dry herb vaporizer to use cannabis, and it's been really nice.
Very nice. It's always better to vaporize it than to smoke it if you have the choice.
Yeah.
Now, didn't Utah have a ballot measure recently for, was it just medical cannabis?
Yes, just medical, and that's still medical in Utah, so it's harder to use cannabis in Utah recreationally or spiritually than either state, really.
Did it pass? Did the medical measure pass?
Oh, yeah. There are medical dispensaries here for cannabis already.
Okay. Who would have thought Utah would not be like among the last of the states? I mean, it's mid-pack, right? Like, I think there's 30-something states that have medical at this point. So I guess it is technically on like the bottom 10 or close to the bottom 10, but it's not the dead last. Yeah. So that's kind of a surprise.
I'm excited because it's moving forward, and I'm hoping that one day Utah will become recreational rather than medical, but I don't think it's going to happen.
I'm sure it will. I mean, that's kind of the direction that all of the states are going in.
Maybe there may still be some. I mean, there may still be a few holdouts of like stalwarts of prohibition. Think about this, Nikki. There are still states that have blue laws. There are still states where you cannot buy alcohol on Sunday. Or there's even what they call dry counties in some southern states where you can't buy alcohol at all. Doesn't matter what day of the week or what time it is.
The town I grew up in Massachusetts was a dry town.
They have them up here too?
Yeah, but you would just drive like 5 minutes to the next town.
Sure,
so
that's how everybody does it.
Well, was it illegal to drink in
No.
town?
So you could drink, but you just couldn't buy it. And I actually think that's fine because it was like a small farmy town, and there was like, 2 gas stations. There wasn't really space for liquor store, and I feel like if the people that live there don't want there to be liquor stores or restaurants that serve liquor,
just to clarify. Could you not buy liquor? Could you not buy beer or wine?
No, you couldn't buy beer, wine, or liquor. So any sort of alcohol.
Okay, that's the problem with that is it just forces, like you said, people to go elsewhere. Yeah. So now all of a sudden, somebody who wants to drink has to drive in order to drink. And not everybody is a responsible person when it comes to that. So you're actually encouraging. That's not their intention, but laws and prohibitions have unintended consequences. And so their intention is, well, we just want to stop people from drinking. Well, no, you've just moved the drinkers. You forced them to go outside of the town and therefore have to drive back in with it. And some of them are going to pop a beer open or, pop open a bottle of Jack Daniels on the way home, whether we like it or not. Yeah. That's going to happen. Whereas if they are in town, maybe they could walk to the store or something like that. So these dry counties, I'm shocked to hear that they're up here too. I thought it was just a southern thing. I did not realize that. Riley, anything else you want to share tonight?
I just want to say that the so-called government people who want to prevent this from happening cannot prevent it from happening. It's a revolution, an evolution. It's time to move it forward.
Absolutely. Thank you, Riley, for the call tonight. Appreciate hearing from you as always.
I love that idea of using cannabis in ritual. I don't think I've ever shared this on the show, but like in recent times that I've tried to smoke cannabis, it has been like super anxiety producing. Like it hasn't been a good experience. And I used to smoke a lot when I was younger. So it's kind of a strange thing for me. I don't know if it's like a tolerance issue or whatever, but I think the way Riley describes it as a spiritual experience with like taking a couple hours to like meditate and, set the environment and just sitting quietly and just like having like a nice, calm, peaceful experience rather than like smoking and then just going off and doing normal daily things. I think maybe that would be better for me. So I'm actually...
You should try that.
I'm definitely going to try that. So thank you, Riley, for giving me that idea. That's wonderful.
I love that he brought up that the government can't actually stop it with any of their rules. Because earlier in the call when he said it's a lot harder to smoke marijuana recreationally in Utah, I was just thinking, Wasn't hard for me.
Well, but it wasn't easy either. Like, you've told me stories about how you lived on a military base and it had to be smuggled through like actual military security, and that's not
Sometimes
an
I'd
easy
have
thing.
to get out of my car with weed in my bra and let them search my car with mirrors under the car and stuff
That's
like that.
nerve-wracking.
And I'm standing
Crazy.
next to these cops while they're, trying to small talk with me, and I'm like, just went to the grocery store or whatever.
Right. That's not easy.
Okay, but it wasn't
That's risky.
impossible.
Yeah, no, anything. Well, where there's a will, there's a way. I mean, clearly the will is for people to get high. I mean, that's just a natural thing for humans. Whether you get high on alcohol or you get high on, something else, that's just what people do. And it's not just a people thing, it's an animal thing. Like, a lot of animals will eat fermented fruit, and they do that on purpose. It's not like an accident. They know what they're getting into. The number here is 603-283-6160. You can join us. Share your thoughts. Reminds me of this dolphin special I watched once where young dolphins would pass around a pufferfish, and the poison that would come off the pufferfish would get them high. It was amazing to watch. More coming up. Free Talk Live.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
After a devastating war, the alien visitors were driven back, and their willing human collaborators were left behind to face the music. When Emma Jean Anderson's ex-lover brings her from prison, Nathan Foster and his 14-year-old nephew Ben are tasked with bringing the pair to justice. An easy enough job until they discover something is inside Emma Jean, and the fate of the planet hangs in the balance. The Family Business by Mike Coopery from BaneBooks.com.
Is oral health important to you? If you don't like your own teeth, fresh breath, or kissing people, then by all means stop listening. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I became passionate about the product that she created and never want to live without it. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, but I find it does much more. They want you to love My Magic Mud as much as I do, so they're giving you a money-back guarantee plus 20% off. Go to mymagicmud.com and use coupon code FTL20 at checkout. mymagicmud.com, FTL20.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live. Phones open. If you want to join the show, the number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. And we are brought to you by Bitcoin.com. If you're ready to learn about cryptocurrency like Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, you can get over to Bitcoin.com, click Get Started at the top of the page there, and you can learn the basics. Because it's high time you do that. It's been 13 years now that Bitcoin's been around. If you haven't taken the time to learn a little bit about it, it's a good plan. In fact, we were just in a restaurant the other day.
I was going to bring that up.
Yeah. Do you want to?
Oh, I was just going to say, I think it's great that the Super Bowl commercials actually influenced people to want to learn about cryptocurrency, because our waitress the other day, we gave her a gold back, and we were explaining to her what it is. She's like, wow, that's really cool. Is this like that crypto stuff? It's kind of cool that she even made that connection, because it is like that.
And she specifically mentioned the Super Bowl.
Oh, yeah, sorry. And she said, yeah, I've always been interested in it, but I saw one of those commercials during the Super Bowl, and now when I move out, I'm going to start learning about it. That's her plan for the summer.
This is the future. And it's not too late.
No.
Bitcoin's on sale.
It sure is. It's been on sale for the last few months. Right now, what is it, like $45,000
yeah,
in
about
Bitcoin?
there.
But remember, you don't have to buy a whole coin. You can buy a fraction of a fraction. Anyway, those are some of the things you'll learn if you go over to Bitcoin.com. Click Get Started at the top of the page. And if you want to get the latest news headlines anytime, whether you're new or an old schooler, OG, head over to news.bitcoin.com. You'll find those there every single day. Let's go to Jack calling us from Washington State. You're on Free Talk Live. Hello, Jack.
Yeah, I have a funny story about mushrooms and my 12-pound Datsun when I was younger.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. First, I want to tell a story. I want David to smoke more weed from Albuquerque.
See,
you know what I'm talking about.
He's too amped up for you, too upset, too agitated.
He is intense.
Yeah.
When I used to take the Liberty Bells, and you'd soak them in a packet of Kool-Aid. Really good, actually. And, cook them that way. They tasted a little bit better. But my little Datsun got into it.
Oh, my.
My whole point is that Shorty's was his name. He drank an entire, top ramen bowl of this stuff.
Oh, my God. No, hold on. Before you go on, what would a bowl of this stuff do to a human being?
It gets you high.
I understand that. So it would be a good dose of mushrooms, is what you're saying.
But he didn't die. He had freaking fallen his shadows around. He was freaking out, and he was having a blast. That's kind of my point. He lived till he was almost 17 years old.
Wow.
He smoked weed about 500 times. We didn't mean to give him the shrooms. I think that would have been too far to be on purpose.
Sure.
Yeah.
But he didn't seem to be frightened. He didn't seem to be unnecessarily having a bad trip
he was
or
having
something.
Fun.
That's amazing.
He probably knew what they were.
Maybe he was like, I want some of that.
Yeah, he was looking for them.
Like, I've been waiting for this for my whole life.
Yeah, he had powers. I mean, he was jumping on top of the couches, flying across stuff,
17 years old? He was 17?
No, he was that old. Yeah, almost 17.
That's so
he was
crazy.
only 8 or 9 when he did the...
Oh, okay. 8 or 9, okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
And then we had another little dog, Coney, and he got into I don't know, gosh, I haven't bought weed on the street for years now, but he got like an eighth of weed, and this dog weighed 6 pounds.
Oh, wow.
He ate the entire damn thing. I mean, this is a little dog. He was a little bit weird, but he was fine. The next day, he was running around. So I'm saying it's kind of like, we put these drugs up there with, crack or, I don't know, battery acid.
Yeah.
But they're not. They can be very helpful, and my dogs both enjoy the heck out of them. I guarantee you that.
Good story, Jack. Anything else you want to share tonight?
No, this Dave needs to smoke some weed.
All right, good advice. Thanks for the call tonight, man. I definitely appreciate it.
And conversely, whenever my dog has to go to the doctor and they give him whatever medicine veterinarians give dogs for pain if they have to have a surgery or something, my dog has the worst time on those pharmaceutical meds. He has a horrible time.
He needs some CBD.
Yeah, it was pretty scary when we had him back after an operation last year.
Yeah, he got a tooth taken out, and they had to put him to sleep to do that. Not put him to sleep all the way, but you know.
Yeah.
I don't know what they use, but when he came home, he was freaking out. He was staring at me like I was terrifying, and then he tried to run away from me, but he couldn't walk. It was horrible.
Yeah, he couldn't even make it up the stairs without
That's a bad trip.
It was bad.
So
it was really bad.
I don't know. I'm just comparing that to pharmaceuticals, to this dog that did shrooms and loved it.
It makes me curious as to what coconut would be like on shrooms. Again,
He's not allowed.
I do agree that you probably shouldn't feed your dog these things on purpose.
Yeah,
but
no, I would not.
Still a pretty entertaining story. We go to Bad Slave in New Hampshire. You're on Free Talk Live. Bad Slave.
Hi there, and I wanted to address my call to Nikki. You had come up with a number for like the first year or 9 months of a baby's injections.
Yeah, that was 5 years old. And that's like if you get all of them.
How many was it?
Well,
about 50.
I actually listened to a video from a pediatrician in Orlando. I can't remember her name, but she seemed a really logical, regular person, regular doctor, and she said in a year or 2 years, the bulk of these injections counted up to like 117.
Jeez.
And I thought, whoa.
Maybe in different states it's different, and I know it's growing and growing.
I feel like when I was growing up in the 80s, it was like 5.
Yeah.
Yeah. 117. So is that like vaccinations and other things? Because I'm like trying to think of all the vaccinations, and like there isn't even that many.
Maybe it's counting like every step of the shot, like the
like the Hep
parts.
B has 3 steps.
Yeah, they have multiple shots for some, just like they tried to do with this,
COVID.
Yeah. And I'm sure if you get a flu shot every year too, that would count.
Speaking of COVID, there's a video that just came out, I guess, within the last couple days. Yeah, just yesterday, from Project Veritas, from a FDA officer who says, an executive at FDA, who is saying they're planning to demand people get annual COVID shots, that this is something the Biden administration is quietly working on. We can share that with you on the way here. Bad Slave, thanks for the call. Appreciate it. We got more coming up, and your calls and thoughts are welcome. The number here, if you want to join the show, it's 603-283-6160. And I do actually have the video from Project Veritas. It's one of those videos where they got this guy to, admit all this stuff over dinner. So the way they're setting these agents of the government and Pfizer and the other people that they've cornered up is they just have them take, like they meet somebody on a dating site or whatever, and it's actually a Project Veritas female reporter.
It does seem like dates.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's exactly what it is.
Who gets them to spill the beans.
They even had
on
like
video.
a gay informant.
Yep, they did that too.
Went on a date with a guy.
The number here is 603-283-6160. You can join us on Free Talk Live. Free Talk Live's video archives have been on Library for years. Library is an uncensorable, decentralized, blockchain-based media sharing protocol, and we're big fans of it here on Free Talk Live. In 2020, Library launched Odyssey, a video sharing website to compete with YouTube, and it's really taking off. Now with over 1 million channels, many of whom are disaffected YouTube creators. During YouTube's crackdown for not towing the government line on COVID, the Free Talk Live YouTube channel started receiving strikes and could be completely taken down at any moment. thankfully, Odyssey started offering live streaming, so we're now streaming live every night and posting our video archives permanently to Odyssey. You can watch live or anytime on our Odyssey channel by visiting video.freetalklive.com. If you want to go all in, download the desktop app at lbry.com, and then every video archive you watch, you'll help seed and keep it online forever. At minimum, we ask you visit video.freetalklive.com and follow us on Odyssey today. video.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. The White House says it has seen no evidence of Russian military de-escalation on the country's borders with Ukraine, mirroring the assessment offered today by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and NATO's Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg. Asked today about Russian Defense Ministry video purporting to show troops pulling out and packing equipment onto the back of trains, Press Secretary Jen Psaki offered this response at the White House briefing.
I think what we are watching very closely is not just what they say, but what they do. I understand you're referencing a video, but we've also seen, as the Secretary confirmed this morning, continued problematic, troubling buildup of troops at the border and surrounding Ukraine.
The U.S., meanwhile, says Russia will face a swift response if it recognizes Donetsk and Luhansk as independent. The Russian parliament this week authorized President Putin to take that move in the predominantly Russian-speaking region of eastern Ukraine. From FSN's Washington bureau, Kate Fisher reports.
President Vladimir Putin said he will not immediately recognize the so-called republics, but he is likely to wield that option as a bargaining chip as he continues to demand security guarantees from the West. The US State Department said that his approval would, quote, amount to the Russian government's wholesale rejection of its commitments under the Minsk agreements. They outlined the process for the reintegration of areas of Ukraine controlled by Russia since 2014.
Efforts continue in Ottawa to end a siege of part of the city by protesters demonstrating against COVID-19 vaccine mandates and other restrictions. FSN's Will Denzelo is on assignment in the Canadian capital for us.
Public Safety Minister Marco Mendicino says police will soon create no-go areas in downtown Ottawa, and those that violate this will be subject to fines or jail time. He adds that more concrete barriers will be set up and that officials will be more forceful in pressuring private tow truck companies to remove big rigs that are illegally blocking roads. This comes after Prime Minister Justin Trudeau invoked the Emergencies Act on Monday, granting greater powers to authorities in an effort to break up the protests.
And there's more trouble today for Britain's royal family. A police investigation has been launched into a charity founded by Prince Charles amid claims that a Saudi funder was offered assistance seeking British citizenship and honours in exchange for his money. Royal commentator Peter Hunt says the heir to the British throne insists he had nothing to do with it.
It's potentially very challenging for him, very uncomfortable for him, and at the very least, just on the basis of this statement that he keeps repeating about not knowing, then there's a question mark about his judgment, because his critics are entitled to ask, well, how didn't he know? How can it be that he didn't know?
And the head of that charitable foundation resigned late last year. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
Yep, it's Free Talk Live, and the phones are open here. You can join us. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Tonight, you've got Ian.
And Bonnie.
And Nikki.
And I want to say thank you to Big G, who is a Free Talk Live supporter via the new AMPS Patreon that we've got set up. He's doing a silver level over there at amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com. You can head over there and sign up with your debit card, credit card, or PayPal via the AMPS Patreon. You get some cool perks, too. And it's only $5 a month. So thank you, Big G, for helping us out over there. That's amps.freetalklive.com. We got Steve Rusnock #1 on Twitch asks, what is the intro song? I really like it. The band that does our intros is called Rebel Inc. Rebel INC, 2 words, Rebel Inc. I don't particularly know offhand the name of the song specifically, but they're a great freedom-friendly rock band, so check them out. They do great work, and they let us use their music.
I think Captain knows,
cool.
and he said it before, but I can't remember either.
I don't know. I mean, I'm the one who put the thing on the air, but that was years ago. So
You'd probably find it. And then you'd be able to
yeah, it's not
find
hard.
more music you like if you just look them up.
Yeah, if you like that song, you're going to like a lot of their stuff. So check that out. All right, let's go to your phone calls and thoughts. Sarah is on the line, calling us from New Mexico. Go ahead, Sarah. Sarah in New Mexico. Going once. Sarah in New Mexico going twice. She usually calls back if she hangs up the line. So, well, I'm sure we'll hear from Sarah later on tonight. So the number again, 603-283-6160. We still have to talk about Mike Lindell coming up here in a little bit, but since Bad Slave brought up the vaccines issue, I do have this video from the folks over at Project Veritas where they caught a man named Christopher Cole, who is with the Food and Drug Administration, saying things like this.
Biden wants to inoculate as many people as possible. So you have to get an annual shot. I mean, it hasn't been formally announced yet, because they don't want to rile everyone up. The drug companies, the food companies, the vaccine companies, they pay us hundreds of millions of dollars a year to hire and keep the reviewers to approve their products. If they can.
Wow.
Haven't they learned yet? Haven't they had some kind of meeting where their bosses said, listen, if you're on a date and someone wants to know about your job, don't talk about the vaccines.
Even if this person wasn't like an undercover, why would you... It just doesn't seem like a smart move if you're doing sketchy stuff.
Well,
to tell this random girl stuff while you're on a date. Like,
he
I don't
thinks
know.
that in his twisted mind, being in the know on Joe Biden's vaccine plans is like cool, and he's like,
it makes him
so
important.
hot.
It makes him
so
important.
hot.
He's an important bureaucrat, and he's running the government, and he wants to brag about that. This
So
is,
gross.
this is his equivalent of with the guy holding up the big fish in the photos, right, on the dating sites, right? He's he's going to mandate vaccines.
This is his version of a lifted truck.
Yeah, exactly.
You can get every person required at an annual vaccine. That is a recurring return of money going into their company. I mean, just from everything I've heard, they're not going to not approve it.
He's talking about, in that case, the toddler vaccine, which comes up later on in the video. So, I mean, that's basically the summary of what is this 6-minute long video that they then will show to you, where he gets into more detail about all these things. But yeah, so they're talking about doing an annual vaccine and possibly doing some kind of a mandate. Now, how they're going to implement that remains to be seen. This guy is some higher up kind of type person in the FDA. So he's not like, a low-level bureaucrat. He's an executive officer heading up the agency's countermeasures initiatives, which plays a critical role in ensuring that drugs, vaccines, and other measures to counter infectious diseases and viruses are safe. But as you heard there just a moment ago, it sounds like they're clearly on the take from the pharmaceutical companies. So you can't believe the FDA when they say anything.
And what he was saying is exactly what the left used to hate above like so many other things, is the fascism of companies going to a government entity and giving them money to push their drugs and approve their drugs. That's horrible, and that's what the left used to be all
And
against.
now they're in favor of it.
It's
crazy. It's insane.
But they were against it when Trump was in office. But then once Biden took over, then they became in favor of the vaccine. They're like, all right, let me roll up my sleeve. Give me 3 shots.
Yeah, when Trump was in office, I had this plan, and I was telling my friends who, they're kind of apolitical, but they're young people.
That's pretty typical for young people.
I would just say, I'm not going to take the Trump vaccine, and they'd all be like, oh yeah, you're right. I'm not going to take it, and now they all have it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because somehow the vaccine changed between Trump and Biden, which is ridiculous.
And there's so many people who only got it because they want to go to concerts.
Yeah,
they
or
want to
travel.
travel.
It's really
so
sad.
that's a big one.
Our very own Mark Edgington got it because he wants to travel.
He got 2 different brands.
He did. He was in that desperate of a situation.
But luckily nothing bad happened to him because
Well, now wait a minute. He says he can't even remember things anymore, and
That's
he
true.
blames COVID for that, which may be what happened to him. But
I think it could be the vaccines. I forgot about that. I was just saying, thank God he didn't just die. But
no, he did not die. Thank goodness. So there's more in this video. We can dig deeper if you'd like. The number is 603-283-6160. Do you guys want to hear more from this bureaucrat in this?
Yeah, I'm kind of
case?
interested because it sounds like he's disagreeing with it, or he at least is acknowledging just by saying, oh, the pharmaceutical companies are trying to make money off of this. To me, that just seems like if you're saying something like that, you know it's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But if he's high level at the FDA...
Some people just don't have moral compasses.
So he introduces himself as a manager for the Food and Drug Administration. Here's some more audio.
Food and Drug Administration. My agency oversees vaccines, vaccine approvals, and devices for vaccines. And my office clears all the emergency approvals. Because since COVID is under an emergency order, we expedite the approval of any emergency. I've been there for like 22 years. Biden wants to inoculate as many people as possible.
And he's
so you have to get
sitting at a dinner table. They've got, you'll hear the clinking of forks and things like that. He's got there's usually like a bottle of wine in front of him. So clearly this person is on a date.
And I love how the undercover journalist says things like, "Oh, she already knew that."
Sure.
Awesome.
Yeah, well, she's feeding him questions so
Yeah.
she can get his answers on tape here. So
Oh, that's what you do.
or on video.
Awesome.
Let's go on.
annual shot. I mean, it hasn't been formally announced yet because they don't want to rile everyone up.
Is it going to be formally announced?
Yeah, at some point. I mean, it's going to be, and some of it's been talked about publicly, but it has been talked about on like CNN or Fox or MSNBC or anything.
Now, it seems unlikely, given what has transpired so far, that they could somehow mandate this on everyone in the United States, because as he points out, that's going to rile people up, and there's going to be a large number of people who refuse to participate. However, what they can do is incentivize it heavily, right, to where they start having vaccine mandates. And they also could, for instance, say, oh, you want to get your Social Security payment? You're going to have a vaccine. Oh, you want to get your welfare payment? You're going to have a vaccine. You want to get a Medicare? You want to get a Medicaid? Whatever.
You want to get a kidney transplant?
They're doing that now.
Yeah, they've been doing that for...
some hospitals.
They've been doing that for like a year or more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, wasn't there a Boston incident recently with something like that?
I knew someone personally.
Oh, wow.
Who he couldn't get a kidney transplant, has double kidney failure.
God, that's insane.
And now his family, I mean, it's just so awful that people have to make these decisions. And then we had another friend, somebody in the Liberty community. He was in Cape Cod at a Cape Cod hospital, and they were refusing him treatment because he was unvaccinated and didn't want to wear a mask. He had a burst appendix, they were refusing treatment.
How can these people, these nurses and these doctors, justify this with the old...
They need to go to jail.
The Hippocratic Oath.
Yeah, the Hippocratic Oath. Thank you. That's what I was looking for. That thou shalt do no harm. Right? That's like what these people supposedly believe. Apparently not anymore. You can share your thoughts here. It's Free Talk Live. Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 27th through July 3rd for the 6th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Fork Fest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which sold out for the first time in 2021. Fork Fest takes place the week after Pork Fest, but Fork Fest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 27th through July 3rd. There's no better place to celebrate Independence Day than around other freedom-loving activists in the Shire. You can find out more at the unofficial website, forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the Forkfest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the Forkfest Forum. You can find links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there. Forkfest.party.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in Liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
This is novelist Tom Robbins. When my mother was diagnosed with glaucoma, her conservative Virginia physician told her there was only one treatment that might ease her pain and save her eyesight. That treatment was medical marijuana, which he could not prescribe. I offered to get her some and teach her how to use it effectively, but my father objected because marijuana was against the law. So my mother, who loved to read and walk in nature, was condemned to grow cruelly, unnecessarily blind. Tragedies like this happen all the time, but they don't have to keep happening. To learn more about medical marijuana, call the Marijuana Policy Project at 1-877-JOIN-MPP or visit them on the web at mpp.org.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. The phones are open. You're invited if you want to join us. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. And in the studio with you tonight, you've got Ian.
And Bonnie.
And Nikki.
We're talking about the FDA. Apparently, at least according to one of their executive agents, has some sort of plan, or the Biden administration has some sort of plan to roll out mandatory COVID vaccinations on a yearly basis. And he says here in this Project Veritas undercover video taken of him as he's obviously out on a date with this undercover Project Veritas reporter, admitting that they're planning this, but they haven't announced it yet because people are going to get riled up about it.
Did he say they haven't announced it yet because
Correct.
of that? Oh,
Yes.
I didn't catch that. I heard him say they haven't brought it up, but not.
Just doesn't make any sense because like they don't mandate the flu shot.
They don't.
Because why would you? That's weird.
Well, as he does admit here in this video, it does mean if they mandate it, that's guaranteed profits for all the pharmaceutical corporations. Yeah. And people are way more afraid of COVID-19 than they are of the flu.
That's true, even though the flu is more deadly.
Yeah, they're very similar in a lot of ways.
I think the government's more afraid of the people rising up, though. Don't you think that if it became mandatory, the people would start doing things like the Canadians?
I would hope so. Absolutely.
I mean, the Canadians don't even own guns. They're not as scary.
That's true. And yet look at how successful the trucker convoy, the Freedom Convoy, has been there in Canada now with, I think, from what I can tell, almost every province repealing their vaccine passports.
Yeah, and Justin.
Really? Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Well, they're announcing it. So some of them have actually repealed it. Alberta has repealed theirs. Saskatchewan, I believe, is the end of this month. And then Ontario and Quebec, I believe, are sometime in March.
Oh, Quebec I didn't know about. I know that they
Quebec just announced this week.
Wow, I know that they kind of stepped back because they were going to start fining the unvaccinated, and then they quickly stopped doing that. But yeah, that's crazy.
So we'll see how it plays out here in the U.S., but this is what he's saying. He's an executive with the FDA. He's saying they're planning to roll out some sort of a mandate on a yearly basis. We continue here.
So yeah, you'll have to get an annual. I think what's going to happen is it's going to be a gradual thing. Schools are going to mandate it.
Okay, that's one thing, right?
But they kind of already are as far as other vaccinations go. I mean, you can't send your kid to public school if they're not vaccinated.
And that is the argument they will use. They'll say, hey, what are you parents complaining about?
When I was a kid, I went to public school and I was unvaccinated.
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
I think my mom got religious exemptions in Tennessee.
Yeah, there is ways around it, and I think different states are more lenient. Like, I'm sure if you tried to pull that in
California.
Yeah, in California or even
way.
New England, you might not have as it's definitely not super easy to do. And I think it's just getting harder and harder for parents to do that nowadays.
And I feel like I've heard that, I don't know if it was Los Angeles County, that there have been COVID vaccine mandates at some school systems already in the United States. So I think that's
in schools too. It's not even approved for, I think it's 12 years and up right now.
No, I think didn't they get a 5?
No, yeah, they were doing the 5.
Yeah,
oh my
they got a 5 to 11
so
year
insane.
emergency authorization. So now they're trying for 6 months to 5 years, I believe, is now the thing that they're pitching to the pharmaceutical companies
next,
pitching for this. In fact, he addresses that coming up here. So here's more.
Why do they need the third one?
Now, okay, so what you can't hear in the audio is they're showing on screen is the text of what's being said, and then the editor is putting into parentheses what she's referring to. So when she says they, she's referring to toddlers. So now this conversation, again, this is an edited video. These guys probably sat here. There's at least 2 different dates. You can see footage from 2 different locations. One of them, they're at an outside thing, kind of, and then this one, there's a completely different angle. He's got a bottle of wine next to him. So they went on a second date, and they got more information out of him. So they're cutting up the video to the most interesting parts. She says, why do they need 3 vaccines? And he says, the same reason you or I would.
Same reason that you or I would need the third one, because the vaccine, it wanes.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike every other vaccine,
what?
it wanes, meaning the effectiveness goes down over time.
I thought he said leaks. I guess Conan is getting in my head.
But that's very unlike other vaccines, right, Nikki? Like the vaccines we grew up with, you take one and you're done.
And some, like the hepatitis B, for example, there's 3 rounds of it. But even with that, I mean, I've had the hepatitis B vaccine 6 times, and I'm still not immune. So there's some that just don't always work with people. But with this, it's generally, once you get it, you should be immune. So I don't understand why you would need to get a new one every single year.
Because it makes for better money for the corporations that make it.
With hepatitis B, do you get the same exact shot 3 times, or is it step 1 is something, step 2 is something?
No, I think I'm not positive, but I think it's the same shot. I mean, and that's when, you get those when you're literally a baby.
More from the video.
Your ability to fight it wanes, so the 3 will bolster your system, and then there will be an annual, eventually an annual, just like the flu shot.
For the toddlers?
Well, for everyone.
Okay, so the toddlers too then. We'll have to get it annually. Okay.
That's in the future. We're not sure. That might involve more studies.
The FDA was scheduled to meet.
She's really brave. I would be so afraid that I would set him off and he would freak out, because first of all, he looks like a straight up psychopath drug warrior or something.
Yeah, he's got these really wide eyes, and he's just staring really intently.
Like he used to be in the military or something.
I think I'm the opposite of you. I'd be afraid that he would say something that would set me off, and that I would freak out and blow my cover.
Yeah, when she's saying even toddlers, I feel like that would almost clue him in, like, this lady isn't down with vaccines.
This guy sounds like an idiot, honestly.
Yeah.
This week to discuss approval of the Pfizer vaccine for children as young as 6 months old. They were hoping to have the new vaccine available by the end of the month, but the meeting was unexpectedly canceled, citing the need for more testing.
You guys have been in the news a lot the last couple of days.
Yeah, we're looking at trying to approve. I don't completely agree with the process. They're looking at trying to inoculate kids under 5 years old.
When he's saying that he doesn't agree with their process, he's referring to the FDA, the agency for whom he works.
And so you're right, Nikki. You're right that he seems like he doesn't approve of it, but he's just still like, yeah, but it's orders. It's what the corporation is doing. I just enforce them. I'm just a manager at this company.
He's probably making good money, too.
Oh, I bet.
So,
government bureaucrat, high-level federal government bureaucrat. They make good money and good benefits on top of that. Let me go on.
Between 6 months and 5 years old.
What do you mean you don't agree with the process?
Well, I mean, they don't have all the tests aren't there. So I agree with the thing that it is important to inoculate them.
Children, toddlers.
Just with the bad tests.
Yeah, he just wants to have more paperwork, I guess.
But you can't provide the parent as much assurity as you normally want to.
Despite Cole's concerns regarding...
So he's not really concerned with injecting children with an experimental vaccine. He's just wants to persuade the parents, be more effective at persuading the parents that this is a good idea. Because if you don't get the parents to buy in on it, it isn't going to happen.
And that's like a huge thing that I hate about a lot of parents. Like, people acting like their kids are their property. Like, I need to be convinced if I give my kid this lifelong, like something that will affect their life for the rest of their lives, injection into their body. That's crazy.
Well, I mean, this does get into an important question about parenting, and I think this is something that libertarians disagree on a kind of a fundamental level, is, are your kids the equivalent of your property while they are under your roof? Can you decide what to put into their body? And it's an interesting discussion. I tend to lean towards the idea that children are their own individuals and should be able to make decisions for themselves. But on the other hand, I do understand the argument that, so there's like the peaceful parent, right, that will not do anything to possibly influence their child in any way. Like, oh, you want to eat candy and never brush your teeth? All right,
that's not
have
just
at
peaceful, it's silly. I mean,
okay, but that's, in theory, like the ultimate far logical extension of peaceful parenting is they don't force any sort of idea on their kids.
Yeah. But what I was saying is, you don't want to harm your kid for the rest of their life. Not, everybody has known for like hundreds of thousands of years that broccoli is good for you, so giving your kids broccoli is abuse. Obviously that's not true, but when your kid has no chance of dying from COVID and you want to give them a rush through the testing process vaccine for it, that if you do any little amount of research, you can see that it's been harming people left and right, I think that should be considered child abuse.
It is. Should you take the kids from those parents?
I don't know that answer.
Oh, these are tough questions. More coming up here in moments. You can share your thoughts. This is Free Talk Live. Hour 3 is next. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. The White House says it has seen no evidence of Russian military de-escalation on the country's borders with Ukraine, mirroring the assessment offered today by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and NATO's Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg. Asked today about Russian Defense Ministry video purporting to show troops pulling out and packing equipment onto the back of trains, Press Secretary Jen Psaki offered this response at the White House briefing.
I think what we are watching very closely is not just what they say, but what they do. I understand you're referencing a video, but we've also seen, as the Secretary confirmed this morning, continued problematic, troubling buildup of troops at the border and surrounding Ukraine.
The U.S., meanwhile, says Russia will face a swift response if it recognizes Donetsk and Luhansk as independent. The Russian parliament this week authorized President Putin to take that move in the predominantly Russian-speaking region of eastern Ukraine. From FSN's Washington bureau, Kate Fisher reports.
President Vladimir Putin said he will not immediately recognize the so-called republics, but he is likely to wield that option as a bargaining chip as he continues to demand security guarantees from the West. The US State Department said that his approval would, quote, amount to the Russian government's wholesale rejection of its commitments under the Minsk agreements. They outlined the process for the reintegration of areas of Ukraine controlled by Russia since 2014.
Efforts continue in Ottawa to end a siege of part of the city by protesters demonstrating against COVID-19 vaccine mandates and other restrictions. FSN's Will Denzelo is on assignment in the Canadian capital for us.
Public Safety Minister Marco Mendicino says police will soon create no-go areas in downtown Ottawa, and those that violate this will be subject to fines or jail time. He adds that more concrete barriers will be set up and that officials will be more forceful in pressuring private tow truck companies to remove big rigs that are illegally blocking roads. This comes after Prime Minister Justin Trudeau invoked the Emergencies Act on Monday, granting greater powers to authorities in an effort to break up the protests.
And there's more trouble today for Britain's royal family. A police investigation has been launched into a charity founded by Prince Charles amid claims that a Saudi funder was offered assistance seeking British citizenship and honours in exchange for his money. Royal commentator Peter Hunt says the heir to the British throne insists he had nothing to do with it.
It's potentially very challenging for him, very uncomfortable for him, and at the very least, just on the basis of this statement that he keeps repeating about not knowing, then there's a question mark about his judgment, because his critics are entitled to ask, well, how didn't he know? How can it be that he didn't know?
And the head of that charitable foundation resigned late last year. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, looking today at P.J. O'Rourke, one of America's best-known satirists and a former editor of National Lampoon magazine. He died in the United States yesterday at the age of 74. His works, including Holidays from Hell, A Parliament of Whores, and Driving Like Crazy, became bestsellers not just in the US but around the world. His libertarian politics were in stark contrast to the counterculture years during which he emerged. And in a 2016 interview with PBS television in Chicago, he was asked to explain why his views were so different from other popular satirists of his time.
The liberal message, and I know it's not that I disagree with everything in the liberal message, but the liberal message is essentially a kind-hearted message. It is an inclusive message. It is a message about how government and politics can give us more things. And of course, that's not completely wrong. They can give us more things, at a cost, however. But it's a crowd-pleasing message, and people in show business tend to be crowd pleasers, and therefore, it's not so much that comedy goes with being left-wing, it's show business that goes with being left-wing.
He described the choice in modern US politics between Democrats and Republicans as being a choice between silly and stupid. And the gonzo journalism that he produced from the Middle East and many other international locations made PJ O'Rourke a cult figure. The main news again, the White House says it has seen no evidence of Russian military de-escalation on the country's borders with Ukraine. Police efforts continue in Ottawa to end a siege of the city by protesters demonstrating against COVID-19 vaccine mandates and other restrictions. And a police probe has been launched into a charity founded by Prince Charles amid claims that a Saudi funder was offered assistance seeking UK citizenship and honours in exchange for his money. And that is the latest feature story news. Simon Marks reporting.
Tides are caused by the moon. The moon's gravitational pull also sucks up the feces and urine of the ocean floor, dumping it in the intertidal zones. The tide goes out, revealing pus-filled cysts known as tide pools, while the moon itself remains hypocritically pristine. Crabs are one of the many disgusting denizens of intertidal pools. They feed on feces and corpses with their demonic mouths. Scuttling hither and thither, they compete relentlessly for the juiciest excrement. Finding a walrus turd is truly nirvana for these abhorrent beasts. After accumulating too much filth to move, crabs bathe themselves in the ocean. Waste floods off the crab's exoskeleton and back into the tide pools as the cycle of shit begins anew.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. You are invited to join us here. You can take control of the airwaves, 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Tonight it's Ian.
It's Bonnie.
And Nikki.
We are sharing with you some of the latest footage, the audio, because we're on the radio, of Project Veritas, the latest undercover operation they've run on the FDA, and apparently they've got another video that they're going to be releasing as well regarding the FDA, so we'll see what other surprises they have for us. But right now, I guess we shouldn't be too surprised to find out that this FDA administrative type, Christopher Cole, admits on an undercover camera that he and the FDA and the Biden administration are planning on a mandatory annual COVID shot. Now, it's not explained exactly how they're planning on mandating such a thing. I suspect it's going to be an incentivized thing that if you want anything from the government, you have to get the COVID shot. If you want any kind of, thing that they've promised to you, whether it's your disability, whether it's Social Security payments when you're retired, or medical coverage, or whatever, welfare, that people are going to have to get a COVID shot. He does suggest that it will be rolled out at government schools, and I think we were just talking about that a moment ago. Nikki, you pointed out that for a long time, government schools have been mandating various different vaccines, and so that's how they're going to excuse this. They'll just say, well, you guys didn't complain when it was, these other shots that we've mandated on your kids. Now it's a problem?
It's so weird because it does seem like it's different because, first of all, it's an mRNA vaccine, which
That's
is new.
different, yeah.
And they don't, they've, at least no school I've ever went to, and I've never heard of them doing this, they don't mandate the flu shot, which is more similar than the chickenpox vaccine. Maybe I can understand, I don't understand any mandates, but
right.
I can see maybe why the average parent would be like, yeah, we need that, that's fine. But this is something totally different.
Well, it is totally different in some ways, but their argument is going to hold muster likely when it comes to legally defending it. It's like, oh, well, we've already been mandating shots. This is just another one.
Will the people excuse it and allow it and not rise up
stand
against
up
it?
against it? Yeah,
that's a great question, because at this point, it seems like most people are vaccinated, or at least claiming they are, so it seems like most people have already taken the bait. And this is another great reason why we can't be relying on the government for things like this, like Social Security and schooling and housing. I know so many people that are collecting from the government who, if they got their benefits and, their Social Security checks taken away, they would be screwed.
Yeah.
So we need to be living independently. If we're going to say that we're libertarians and anarchists, we need to act like it. We need to live independently and be able to provide for ourselves and our families without needing daddy and mommy government agencies to take care of us.
Right. If you want the government to take care of you, they're going to tell you what you put in your body and what you can't put in your body. And we're going to go to your calls and thoughts. More from Project Veritas coming up here. But first, Jessica is on the line in Missouri. Jessica, you're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to address this chick that keeps calling in every single day, Sarah from New Mexico, who raves and caves about how great communism is.
Right, even though she's never actually seems to have read a thing about it.
She hasn't read anything about it. In 1973, when I was 17 years old, I went to the Soviet Union on a tourist visa for 11 days with my Russian class.
Oh, wow.
And all the people that had like decent clothes and something decent to eat were all tourists, like from Western Europe and America. The Russian people were all poor. Even the cops and the party people were all poor. They had nothing. They had cardboard shoes. It was like 30 degrees below zero. I went in April, and it was cold. It's like they had cardboard shoes and all this garbage. It's like this Sarah chick, she gets a welfare check from the state probably for being some form of nut job or whatever. But I mean, the reason that comes in, she thinks that's communism. That's not communism. In a communist country, it's from each according to his ability, to each according to his work. If you don't want to work, you want to sit around and cry disability and have them feed you and house you and give you money, it's like they don't do that in communist countries, man. Nope. They put you in a gulag in Siberia where, by the way, you have to work or they'll just kill you.
You will die. I mean, even if you are working, you're going to likely die if you're at a gulag in Siberia.
Yeah, that's true, but,
That's what they do. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, people always talk about Hitler, and Hitler, bad, no doubt about it. But communism, worse. I mean, they killed more people in Russia.
Stalin killed like 10 times as many Jews as Hitler did, and he killed like 100 times as many people as World War II did.
Yeah, of their own people.
We're not talking about nice people here that are benevolent and just give you stuff.
Right, and it's not something it's not some sort of phenomena that only existed 100 years ago. This is something that's happening today. It's happening in North Korea, where you cannot leave. You are literally living in a prison state. And you have it's happening in China, where if you
can't leave North Korea is because if they open their borders and let people leave, there would be nobody there for them to lord it over.
Yeah, literally.
Everybody would leave.
There are some true believers. I mean, there must be true believers who still believe that the Kims are gods, and they've completely bought into to all that. But yeah, a lot of people would get out of there.
Eventually, they'd starve without anybody to do slave labor.
To work for them.
Well, it's like 1984, right?
South Korea and be freer.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. It's like 1984 where they're controlling all of the media and all of the propaganda, and so these people are just being fed.
Is why is this Sarah lady? Why is she not apprised of? I mean, okay, she's thinking she gets a welfare check, so she lives under a form of communism here. It's like the only reason the welfare check is coming is because this capitalism made this society so prosperous. Some of our dumber politicians thought it would be a good idea to take people's money and give it to other people that for whatever reason didn't want to work.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Jessica. I mean, it's ignorance. It's ignorance is bliss in the case of Sarah. I mean, she is very ignorant. You cannot inform her.
Well, she told me she doesn't read.
No.
I asked her if she reads about communism or how she gets her information, because she's always saying, someone told me this, someone told me that.
Yeah.
And she said she doesn't read on the air.
No, she went to some communist meetings once, and somebody told her a thing or two about it, and she's just been parroting it ever since without doing any kind of investigation of her own. She chooses not to go on the internet, because she could, right? Like, she doesn't have a computer, but she could go to the library and use one there.
But she's afraid of germs.
So she says.
Here, just crack open a book at the library for anything else.
Jessica, great call. Yeah. Anything else you want to share tonight?
Yeah, also about the truckers in Canada. It's like, the Trudeau and his merry band of jerks are threatening all kinds of retribution on them.
Yes.
And they're still standing their ground. I think that's great, man.
Thank you. I agree.
That's very great.
Thanks, Jessica. Great call tonight. Really appreciate the perspective. Well-informed caller in that case. And the other thing I wanted to say was about China. She mentioned Trudeau. We played a clip from him last night where he is just lauding the Chinese, lauding how they can just do whatever they want with their people, and they can, if they want to mandate.
He was saying that last night?
Well, I played a clip of it last night, but I don't know when he said it. He was speaking to some group. It was a 30-second clip of him just salivating over the power that the Chinese have, and the face that he had. Like, he had this really excited look on his face as he was talking about it. You could tell he was really into what the Chinese are able to get away with over there. And of course, they've got gulags there right now. Now they're calling them re-education camps.
That sounds so nice. A re-education camp.
Yeah. Did you hear that they had a Uyghur Muslim go and light the torch this year at the Olympics?
Really? No, I didn't
That's
hear
what
that.
I heard. Maybe I shouldn't have said it before verifying, but I would just like to show oh no, see, they are our friends. We just re-educated them, and that's insane.
Wow. All right, more coming up here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. You can take control of the airwaves. We got more on the mandatory vaccination that they're talking about. Hasn't been officially announced yet. This according to Project Veritas' latest undercover video. This is Free Talk Live.
Are you tired of your taxes funding endless occupations around the world? Antiwar.com is run by people who understand that wars abroad become wars at home, wars on our freedoms. Antiwar.com is dedicated to bringing you the latest in news, views, interviews, and reviews from the top movers and shakers in the anti-occupation movement. Antiwar.com has it all, from thorough foreign policy analysis to interviews with whistleblowers who used to run the military-industrial complex. Anti-war, pro-free market. That's antiwar.com.
When a lunar observatory detects a radio broadcast originating from Proxima Centauri, the nations of Earth discover their first contact with an alien race may also be their last. With the Proximans facing an extinction-level disaster, Earth must choose between sending a ship on a multi-year journey or allowing nature to take its course. Saving Proxima, a hard science fiction thriller by Travis S. Taylor and Les Johnson from BaneBooks.com.
I'm a little obsessed with My Magic Mud. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, the founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I didn't even know my teeth were coffee stained. A week's worth of use convinced me, and now I use it every 3 or 4 days. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, and I think it cleans better, too. My Magic Mud's available at most local health food stores, Sprouts, Natural Grocers, CVS, Walmart's Natural Beauty Aisle, but I can get it for you for 20% off with coupon code FTL20 at mymagicmud.com. FTL20 mymagicmud.com.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you're helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com. Why did you move to the Shire?
I moved here to the Shire because there's other people around who take liberty just as seriously as I do.
I moved to the Shire because I saw videos of people challenging authority and thought that I could get support myself. It called to me, like do this right now?
I wanted to be around people like me who got it. And once I got here, I knew there was nowhere else that I wanted to be.
I've always wanted to change the world. So I moved to the Shire to join people who were actually working towards doing the same thing.
The people here are awesome, loving, and positive. It was for the adventure and for the feeling of something important is happening here. And I just wanted to come to sort of be part of that.
Visit ShireSociety.com to read and sign the Shire Society Declaration and learn the reasons why, if you love liberty, you should immigrate to the Shire. Plus, connect with others via the forum at ShireSociety.com. That's ShireSociety.com. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live. We will continue with that video here in moments. The FDA Executive Officer of Countermeasures Initiative. Sounds like a cop or something like that. It sounds like a military band or something like that. Like, we're the Countermeasures Initiative. It doesn't really sound like a Food and Drug Administration position, but that's apparently what he does.
Is countermeasures like a medical term? Me and Ian don't know.
No.
Yeah, Nikki, by the way, is a nurse, trained as a nurse. Currently not working, I don't think, as a nurse.
No, I was fired.
They blew you
for
out the
being
door.
unvaccinated.
Yeah. 603-283-6160 allows you to join us here on the radio. It's Ian, Bonnie, and Nikki in the studio, and of course, you can bring up absolutely anything you want to discuss. Coming up this summer, in about 4 months from now, and it's going to be here before you know it, the Porcupine Freedom Festival and Fork Fest, which is the week after the Porcupine Freedom Festival. So if you don't have your Porcupine Freedom Festival tickets, you ought to get them soon, because they are, last we heard, over 80% sold out. And normally they don't even go on sale until like the Liberty Forum, which is in 2 weeks, but now it looks like they might be sold out before the Liberty Forum starts. So this event has become an epic level party and camping festival in the woods in beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire at Rogers Campground. You don't want to miss the Porcupine Freedom Festival, but if you want to go to an event that doesn't require ticketing, that has no central control whatsoever, you want to check out Fork Fest. It's the week afterwards. It's June 27th through July 3rd, and it's the 6th annual Fork Fest happening this year. It happens, and it's great, and it's much smaller. It's kind of like the after party, the chilled out after party for a week that culminates in an epic fireworks show at the campground that they've been putting on for, I think, 43 or 44 years now. It's pretty amazing. You don't want to miss it. Free Talk Live is expecting to be on site broadcasting for both the Porcupine Freedom Festival and Fork Fest. So check out forkfest.party and get your campsite, your RV site, or your motel room with Rogers Campground, June 27th through July 3rd for Fork Fest 2022 at forkfest.party. Keep in mind, the Porcupine Freedom Festival, if you want to camp there, you're going to have to share a site with somebody. All of the campsites are sold out at this point. That is not the case at Fork Fest. There's plenty of room. So check out forkfest.party as we continue up. She was just being spoken of, but I don't think she's listening. Sarah, were you listening when that caller we just spoke with, Jessica, was on the line?
No, I was listening to the earlier calls until like
before, like for 40 minutes, but what was the call
You
before?
mean the only time that you were on hold? So the time you were holding, you were listening to the show, but you don't actually listen when you're not on hold.
She doesn't have to, right?
Well, well, you know what? I tried calling the listen line, and they told me to go to our website. I really tried, and they gave me some.
What's the number, Ian?
I'll have to look up the number. I don't have it offhand.
Oh, I thought you knew it. Sorry.
Yeah, I tried it. It told me to go to some website, and I can't figure it out. So, but I mean, I listen when I'm on hold. So, was she talking about Ukrainian? Was that about?
No, she was saying that if you knew what communism really was, you would probably not like it, and that getting welfare in the United States is nothing like real communism, because in 1973 she visited Soviet Russia with her classmates, and she said people there were wearing cardboard shoes in, Arctic tundra weather, and they were very poor, and it was not a paradise.
Okay, so but I was gonna call in about the Russia saying that they had the mass grave of the Ukrainians that wanted to separate and join Russia. That's what they're claiming, but I actually happen to believe it. But
what did they say?
What they're saying is that the eastern part of Ukraine, the Ukrainians killed the separatists. In other words, there was people that wanted to be part of Russia, and they killed them all, and they have mass grave sites. So it is a reason and a cause to invade Ukraine for the people that were allies to them. So, but, I happen to believe that because the capitalists are violent when it comes to squashing the communists.
And the communists are completely peaceful, right?
Well, I mean, no, I'm not saying they're completely peaceful, but they are we become aggressive because they starve.
Do you think it was
us,
okay
they
when they killed millions upon millions of their own people in Russian communism?
I really don't know how much of that is true. They just, they always make communism bad. It's every time you hear about.
I just told you about somebody who personally went there and visited and saw it with her own eyes. I mean,
And
she
she
didn't see
ignored
somebody
you.
dying.
She ignored every
She
word
did.
out of your mouth.
But she saw the living conditions of the average people. She said even like the cops and party people were extremely poor, wearing cardboard shoes in the snow.
I know people that who have immigrated to America from Russia and China and different communist countries, and let's just say they came here for a reason.
Okay, but you know something? Without communism in the United States or Canada, without communism, we'll be doing really bad too. Unemployment, workmen's compensation, disability, welfare, those are all communist programs. We're going to wind up having a civil war here.
I think you could describe those as socialist programs, definitely. Like, I think the cops are a socialist program for people who want everyone to pay for their protection racket. That's like a socialist program. But communism is like every single part of the economy is basically socialized.
It's controlled by the state.
Yeah. It's not communism in the United States.
Let me address what Sarah's saying. Whether we're going to call it communist programs or socialist programs, they are forced wealth redistribution, and she's heralding this as some sort of positive thing. And I'm going to tell you, Sarah, that it is actually not positive to have government welfare. It actually gets people hooked on the welfare payments. It prevents them from going out there and being productive and creating something and making life better for people. Instead, they just suck off the teat of the state, and they never stop. They take as much welfare as they possibly can. And you know what this is like because it's basically been your life for the last 30 or 40 or 50 years or whatever, right?
And you always argue you want people to donate to the Rwanda and everybody. You have that homeless filter that people
voluntary donations. Yeah.
Okay, but what if they don't have any money to give? How about that?
Well,
Okay,
if we actually have freedom,
low,
Sarah, what you don't understand is when you have freedom, you have a free market, and you have a tremendous amount of wealth contribution or wealth creation because people are free to create the things that they want. They're free to open the businesses that they want. They're free to compete. They're free to get up and create something that competes with the big players without having to ask some government person's permission first. And the fact that freedom brings wealth, and wealth means you've got plenty of money to give. People have lots of money in the United States, even with all the government
only reason that
mandates.
people think that welfare is something that's very needed is because they are not allowed to see what the other possibilities would be. We're being forced to try one thing. It's clearly not working, ruins people's lives.
And costs a lot of money.
It is not, effective or, I can't remember the word, but...
It's not efficient.
Efficient. It's not efficient, but... We're not allowed to try any other way because the government, controls
Well, you can
that.
try some other ways. It's just you have to pay for the government's crap system
you
on
can't,
top of it.
You can't try not being stolen from the government.
Well, that's true.
Without going to jail.
I just meant you can have a charity still in most cases.
Yeah.
Thankfully. But
They'd
there's
be
more
even
coming
better.
up. Thank you, Sarah, for the call tonight. There's more on the way. You can share your thoughts here. It is Free Talk Live.
If you want to bring more liberty into your community, there's something you should see. Intercoin, the movement you might want to join. If you like Bitcoin, break through. It's true. It's truly something new. If you'd like to see real prosperity, start your own currency, boost the economy. Intercoin, the movement you might want to join. If you like Bitcoin, its impact's hard to overstate, results you can appreciate. If you're tired of relying on the state, want to make your own community great, homelessness and hunger to eliminate, let the wealth accumulate. Don't wait for the growth rate to accelerate. Go to intercoin.org and get the coins for yourself.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. The White House says it has seen no evidence of Russian military de-escalation on the country's borders with Ukraine, mirroring the assessment offered today by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and NATO's Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg. Asked today about Russian Defense Ministry video purporting to show troops pulling out and packing equipment onto the back of trains, Press Secretary Jen Psaki offered this response at the White House briefing.
I think what we are watching very closely is not just what they say, but what they do. I understand you're referencing a video, but we've also seen, as the Secretary confirmed this morning, continued problematic, troubling buildup of troops at the border and surrounding Ukraine.
The US, meanwhile, says Russia will face a swift response if it recognizes Donetsk and Luhansk as independent. The Russian parliament this week authorized President Putin to take that move in the predominantly Russian-speaking region of eastern Ukraine. From FSN's Washington bureau, Kate Fisher reports.
President Vladimir Putin said he will not immediately recognize the so-called republics, but he is likely to wield that option as a bargaining chip as he continues to demand security guarantees from the West. The US State Department said that his approval would, quote, amount to the Russian government's wholesale rejection of its commitments under the Minsk agreements. They outlined the process for the reintegration of areas of Ukraine controlled by Russia since 2014.
Efforts continue in Ottawa to end a siege of part of the city by protesters demonstrating against COVID-19 vaccine mandates and other restrictions. FSN's Will Denzelo is on assignment in the Canadian capital for us.
Public Safety Minister Marco Mendicino says police will soon create no-go areas in downtown Ottawa, and those that violate this will be subject to fines or jail time. He adds that more concrete barriers will be set up and that officials will be more forceful in pressuring private tow truck companies to remove big rigs that are illegally blocking roads. This comes after Prime Minister Justin Trudeau invoked the Emergencies Act on Monday, granting greater powers to authorities in an effort to break up the protests.
And there's more trouble today for Britain's royal family. A police investigation has been launched into a charity founded by Prince Charles amid claims that a Saudi funder was offered assistance seeking British citizenship and honours in exchange for his money. Royal commentator Peter Hunt says the heir to the British throne insists he had nothing to do with it.
It's potentially very challenging for him, very uncomfortable for him, and at the very least, just on the basis of this statement that he keeps repeating about not knowing, then there's a question mark about his judgment, because his critics are entitled to ask, well, how didn't he know? How can it be that he didn't know?
And the head of that charitable foundation resigned late last year. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
This is Free Talk Live, and you can join us here on the radio if you want to talk about whatever's on your mind. You can do that. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. We got more from the Project Veritas undercover video of a FDA executive officer of the agency's countermeasures initiatives, which apparently plays a critical role, says Veritas, in ensuring that drugs, vaccines, and other measures to counter infectious diseases and viruses are safe, or at least so they claim. Now, to get back into what Sarah had kind of touched on earlier, well, what if we didn't have all these government regulations? Wouldn't we be saddled with all these dangerous drugs that can hurt us? Don't we need the government to step in the way and make sure that drugs are safe?
I know at least one person who died because they weren't, died before they were allowed to try untested medication.
Because the federal government prevented them from trying untested medication, is what you're saying.
So he was going to die anyway.
Yeah.
Who wasn't allowed to try an untested medication.
Because of bureaucracy.
Yep.
They just got in the way. And there's a lot of people. You said you know someone like that?
Well, it's one of our friends' ex-wives.
Because there's
wife
thousands.
who died.
There's thousands of people who, maybe tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands who, could have tried an experimental medication, would have been willing to try an experimental.
Voluntarily.
Right. It's their body. They're the ones who are sick.
Yeah,
but
my
no,
body, my choice.
Some bureaucrats said, nope. Oh, no. The pharmaceutical company hasn't paid us enough billions of dollars yet. They haven't jumped through all the arbitrary hoops we've put up.
And it's so ironic because there are so many pharmaceuticals that doctors are still prescribing that are not safe.
Absolutely.
And they're causing people to have a slew of side effects.
I forget who it was. I think it was Mary Ruwart, who's a great libertarian author, wrote Healing Our World. She's worked in the pharmaceutical business for a very, very long time. And she says that if today if aspirin had never been invented and someone just now was coming up with aspirin and trying to put it through the FDA approval process, it would never make it.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
And aspirin is used all the time
Right.
for so many different things. I mean, we give it to babies and elderly people
It came
and
out
everybody in
before
between.
the approval process. So it was grandfathered in.
Wow.
And it wouldn't make it through it now. So the number is 603-283-6160. People should be able to be free to choose. If you want to try something experimental, you should be free to do that. Consult with your doctor and make a decision. And you shouldn't have to ask your doctor, by the way. You should be able to just go and get whatever it is you want.
At Walmart.
At wherever.
Yeah.
So let's continue here. We've been playing a clip from Project Veritas. They've got these undercover videos they've been doing over the last year or so. I mean, they've been doing them for longer than that, but focusing on COVID in the last year or so, and they've been pretty shocking, pretty interesting stuff. This is Christopher Cole. He's a FDA executive officer being recorded by one of the Project Veritas female reporters on what is obviously a couple of dates that they went on, where he brags about how they're going to mandate a vaccine for everyone in the United States on a yearly basis, but doesn't really get into details on exactly how that's going to be. He does suggest they would mandate it for school children, which is easy for them to do, but that would still mean that you could probably pull your kid out of the government school and avoid it. So there's going to be likely some ways to get around this.
It's hard to homeschool in some states like
That's true.
California.
Yep, some states make it a lot more difficult to homeschool, which is why if you actually are a liberty-minded person, you've got kids, and you want to have a better time, you should get out of those places, and you should consider moving if you're a libertarian or a voluntarist or a liberty-loving anarchist, you've got to get up to New Hampshire. There's just no better place.
A surety as you normally want to.
Despite Cole's concerns regarding the possible dangers of vaccinating young children, it seems the FDA is still willing to go through with this approval.
It's an EUA for all age groups, all designations.
EUA stands for Emergency Use Authorization, is what he's talking about.
And then you have to get approved by specific age groups based on the study.
Do you think it's really an emergency for the toddlers?
Well, they're all approved under an emergency, just because it's not as as impactful as some of the other approvals, emergency approvals, but they're all being approved under that standard. The efficacy data doesn't have to be as high.
He didn't actually answer the question about what he thinks.
Yeah.
He's kind of dodged it like a politician.
Yeah, maybe he kind
would
of
do.
is catching on, or
That he's
doesn't
being
like-
interviewed?
Yeah, doesn't like that question.
I don't know. It's a good question. Hang on.
The standard is on emergency use authorizations is that it does more benefit than harm.
So how do you know it's already getting approved?
Well, they're not going to, just from everything I've heard, they're not going to not approve it.
He's talking about the toddler vaccine.
Wow.
So one's from 6 months to 4 years. So the deal is done. It's not really about studies or whatever. It's all
about money.
political. Yeah, it's all about money.
And I think his not answering that first question when she asked, well, is it really an emergency? Like, do 6-month-olds really need to get this vaccine, like, emergently? I think him not answering that question
is an answer.
Is an answer, It's like,
no,
of
this
course,
is about money.
If he felt passionate about it, he'd be like, what are you talking about? Millions of babies are dying all around the world. They need to be vaccinated, but they're not.
No. And it is all about approving this so more doses can be given out, so the bottom lines of all these medical corporations, Pfizer and Moderna, can go up.
Their cases weren't that high for 6 month to 4-year-olds.
They're not, but because it's related to COVID, it's under that approval process.
So how many babies did they have to jab, basically, for the trial?
I don't know. I haven't looked at the trial, how many people they did. There's always a chance of long-term effects, especially with someone younger.
Cole seems certain the federal government will require annual COVID vaccines, including young children, even though the efficacy, adverse reactions, and long-term effects are still unknown.
It's hard to find, pregnant women for these studies, and a significant number in order to be statistically accurate. I haven't tested enough on pregnancy, on vaccines and everything, and women, because they have different systems than men. And
They haven't tested enough?
Well, they have, but they haven't done enough prior. Now the House has been very good at promoting that, but that was an issue for a period of time.
Well, I feel like that's still an issue.
It is still an issue. We still haven't gotten there.
Well, it's good to know that they can't find a lot of pregnant women who are willing to subject their infant fetus.
I don't believe
to this.
that because I know pregnant women who have gotten the vaccine. I know obstetricians who are telling every single woman that comes into their office that it's safe to get vaccinated while you're pregnant. It's actually better.
Wow.
So there are actually a lot of pregnant women doing this.
Yeah.
And the 3 pregnant women in our practice that we had in the home birth setting all miscarried within days. Got their second dose of the vaccine in 3 days later. They all miscarried. We don't have a huge practice. We're really only seeing 2 to 4 births a month. But I mean,
that's significant.
That's even crazier. It's like a huge percentage of your clients had miscarriages.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's any statistics about that. I wonder if miscarriages are up in the last year.
Yes, they are.
You've seen something about
yes.
that?
Stillbirth is up as well, and that's when your baby is born dead.
Wow.
So, and they're blaming it on COVID, and I think a lot of the stuff that they're blaming on COVID is really the vaccine. I mean, maybe COVID is having some negative effects, but...
Wow. Do you recall what the increase was? I mean, I know obviously you're not prepared for this conversation, but
no, I don't know the exact percentage, but it's been substantial, and it's been to the point.
So it wasn't
where,
2% or something like that.
No, it was substantial.
Like 2
it was
digits, double digits.
Yeah, definitely double digits. I'm thinking 30 to 40%, but don't quote me on that because I'm not completely sure. But it was to the point where a lot of certified nurse midwives that were working in the hospital setting quit because they were like, I'm sick of the way this is going, where babies are being born really, really sick and there's an increase in complications.
If you want to join the show, you can. The number here, 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. You can bring up whatever's on your mind in the remaining moments of Free Talk Live, which are coming up. 603-283-6160.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market.
Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
If you're looking for work, you know the math. There are many more applicants than openings, so you need to stand out, not blend into the blah, blah, blah your interviewer is hearing from your competition. Here's a tip. In your interview, you will be judged more by the questions you ask than the answers you give. Yes, do anticipate the obvious job interview questions and prepare concise, insightful, glass-half-full sounding responses. And you should interview your interviewer. Seem genuinely curious about what will help get results. With money and attention so scarce now, effective communication skills have never been more important. You want to cut through the clutter. For more tips for job seekers and making all the other conversations you have more productive, hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. The phones are open. You can join us here. Bring up whatever you want. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Here tonight, it's Ian.
It's Bonnie.
And Nikki.
We're going to continue here with a little bit more from Project Veritas. Undercover video of a man working for the FDA admitting on what appears to be a date or two with with one of the reporters from Project Veritas that the FDA has plans to have some sort of an annual vaccine, COVID vaccine mandate that he is fully expecting the FDA to approve the vaccine for children or toddlers aged 6 months to 4 years old or 5 years old. He says it's basically almost a guarantee because, well, they've got to help the pharmaceutical companies make money. We're going to continue, and of course, you're welcome to share your thoughts at 603-283-6160. Also, don't forget, you can join us online anytime over at freetalklive.com. We do have our own social media site, and that is social.freetalklive.com. That allows you to express yourself in ways that you're not allowed to do on some of the big platforms like Twitter or Facebook. We run the server, so we get to decide how it operates. It's a Mastodon server, which means it's federated and it's open source. Federated meaning you can connect to other Mastodon servers, so you can follow people on other servers, and they can follow you on our server. It's pretty cool. Check it out at social.freetalklive.com. A little bit more here from the video at Project Veritas.
I read like a couple articles about it, and everything I saw was that the first 2 shots weren't effective.
There has been, yes, has not been as effective as they're expecting. I agree.
Remember back when they were saying it would be 100% effective?
Yeah, the first one.
If you get this shot, you won't die. That's what Joe Biden said.
And now it's like, you won't die as hard.
Right. All right. So, quote, prior to publishing, FDA press officer Abby Cabocchiano provided a comment regarding their investigation. Quote, the person purportedly in the video does not work on vaccine matters and does not represent the views of the FDA, she said. Here in an insert.
And if all that doesn't raise some eyebrows.
No, she's saying he's not in the vaccine section. So, well, his opinions are irrelevant, she's saying.
Just wait until you see what he says in part 2 about the billions of dollars exchanging hands between our government and Big Pharma, and what really goes on behind the scenes during the approval process.
There's almost $1 billion a year going into FDA's budget from the people we regulate. If they can get every person required at an annual vaccine, that is a recurring return of money going into their company.
We've been saying this for a long time, that this is all about getting money, and that's why they're coming out with boosters, because they don't want it to be a 2 shots and you're done thing. Then the money's
that's only billions
over.
Of dollars.
Right. Then tens of billions. Then the money's over. They need to get to the hundreds of billions. And that's how they do it. Just keep on mandating, keep on pushing.
But the shots are free.
They're not.
Didn't you know that the shots are free?
No such thing as a free lunch. Taxpayers are paying for those shots. Well, let's change gears here, Bonnie. You had a story about Mike Lindell. That's the MyPillow guy, and we've actually had them on as a sponsor here on Free Talk Live.
Really? I didn't know that.
We have the MyPillow. It's a fine pillow.
Yeah, my dad, he's really conservative, like right-wing, and I told him that they used to be an advertiser on Free Talk Live, and he was like, wow, that's so cool. Okay, this is from NH Journal. Sununu mocks Manchester visit by, quote, infomercial guy, Lindell. MyPillow CEO Mike Lindell may be a rock star on the fringe right, but Gov Chris Sununu tells NH Journal he is not impressed. Quote, New Hampshire isn't interested in debunked political conspiracy theories from some infomercial guy.
I love how he just purports to speak.
Right?
For New Hampshire.
Right.
I was so annoyed when I read that. I don't care about what this Mike Lindell guy says, but I know lots of New Hampshire people who do.
Absolutely. Like anybody out there waving a Trump flag is probably a fan of Mike Lindell. I mean, that's usually the two things go hand in hand. And the reason for that is because Mike Lindell seems to be kind of crazy.
It's kind of like Alex Jones.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I don't know a whole lot about the guy.
Is he that radicalized?
Not that much.
Well,
I don't know.
Well, from what I understand about him, he was, after Trump lost in 2020, he went crazy, Mike Lindell, and he started to believe that Trump was actually secretly going to be inaugurated, despite the fact that, he didn't win the election, and he keeps... or for some amount of time, I don't know if he's still pushing this idea. Again, I don't pay any attention to him, but But Vincent, who was one of our co-hosts for a long time, would frequently like follow the things that he said and make fun of him because he kept on saying that, okay, March 15th, Trump's going to have an inauguration and he'll be announced as the real president of the United States. And then, of course, it didn't happen, so he pushes it back. Kind of like a true believer in a cult.
Or the people who think they know what date Jesus is going to come back.
Right,
and they just keep pushing it back. Yeah. I know a lot of people that thought that about the Trump thing, though.
Right, he's one of them. They thought it probably because he was a thought leader on this and was promoting this. Anyway, what's he doing now?
Well, Chris Sununu goes on to say, and this is kind of a telling sentence from Chris Sununu, our citizens can sleep easy knowing that our elections were safe, secure, reliable, and accurate, just as they are every year, Sununu said.
Oh my God, shut up.
Arya lost in, what's it called,
Westmoreland, New Hampshire.
To like 6,000 votes.
Yeah, I
for
think it
her
was 7,000
campaign.
Votes in a town of 1,500 people.
Yeah, so I don't know. I'm not really one of those huge like proponents for like this was a scam and Trump actually won, but I wouldn't put anything past the government, and that seems like an easy thing for them to do is just pick the president, the winner.
I don't believe that most elections are real. It's especially nowadays. It's just so easy for them to fudge those numbers. Like you said, Arya lost by more votes than people that actually live in the town. I mean, are you kidding?
Well, I think that's probably an error on somebody's part.
And that's what Arya likes to say, or does always say, so it's not like I'm making any absolute declaration that it was on purpose, but it's just like it's that easy for a huge mistake like that to happen.
Yeah, if they just tacked on an extra zero, I mean...
And nobody had, made a big deal about it, so if, nobody's paying that much attention.
You mean our co-host?
No.
Nobody?
Nobody made a big deal about it in the streets.
I mean, there's always questions about elections. In New Hampshire, you actually have the ability to watch the count if you want to. I mean, God, it would be boring.
That sounds so boring.
And that's why people don't do it, right? Because they've got everyone else has better things to do unless you're a total political junkie.
Paint dry.
Is there a possible way for every single count for the presidency to be watched?
In New Hampshire, probably.
But I'm just saying, do you have that many people and all the people that you send to each voting place to be trusted?
No, because it would be very hard to actually find someone who wants to go and do that.
Exactly. Well, I don't know. I'm not saying that I know it was stolen. I don't really have a huge opinion on Mike Lindell, but I think he should be allowed to speak in a state without the governor going and saying New Hampshire people don't want to hear you. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. It says... His statement stands in stark contrast to Lindell, who claims the Granite State presidential election was stolen by Chinese computer hackers.
I don't know about that.
Which is silly, because why wouldn't our government be the one doing it? Why?
Right. Why does it have to be the Chinese?
Well, because they love to outsource to China.
Sure. The big boogeyman.
It said, and corrupted vote counting machines that switched more than 50,000 votes. Lindell, best known for his nonstop TV ads on Fox News and out there theories about COVID-19.
Well, it's worth pointing out that if Trump had won New Hampshire, it still wouldn't have flipped anything because New Hampshire doesn't have that many.
Yeah, he doesn't just say it about New Hampshire. He says it about like Arizona,
et cetera,
I don't know, everywhere. But it says he has nonstop TV ads on Fox News and out there theories. It doesn't say conspiracy theory, but. About
this is
COVID-19.
What Sununu's saying?
No, this is what
this is NH Journal. Okay.
And the 2020 election, he is bringing his conspiracy roadshow to Manchester's Doubletree Hotel Wednesday morning. The New Hampshire State House of Representatives will convene at the same hotel due to COVID-19 concerns that morning. I don't understand how convening at that hotel is going to make them safer from COVID than convening at what's that place where they're supposed to convene, the reps
hall? Talking about the state reps?
That's what it says.
I think the idea is they have more room. So they're in like a big meeting space, whereas in the State House, the seats are fairly close together, right? So like at the State House, you're literally right next to one another.
Yeah.
And in this other place, I think they're spread out 6 foot or something like that. So out of time for tonight. You can join us online between now and tomorrow night over at freetalklive.com. Don't forget, you can follow us on various different social media, but we prefer you be on ours over at social.freetalklive.com. And don't forget our Matrix chat server over at chat.freetalklive.com. There's a bunch of cool rooms there, and if you want to create a room or 2 or 3, you can do that too. It's all up to you. We'll see you tomorrow. There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full